Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are here today discussing a very, very important subject to my heart, which are the characters in storytelling, in pieces of literature, in our beloved anime and manga, video games, or wherever it is that you consume your favorite stories. And so because of that, I was like, there's no way I can do this by myself. I have to bring on individuals who know peak fiction. I have to bring on individuals who wear it not just on their sleeves, it is in their blood cells. Their blood does not bleed red. No. I had to bring on individuals whose blood bleeds peak fiction. And because of that, today, I have two very special individuals. First, coming in off of what has been a roller coaster of a week for a certain fandom. I'm glad to have him on because normally whenever we get to do these discussions, it'll be like off call and or sometimes on stream. But I'm glad to have him here on the channel once again. My guy, Radman, a.k.a. Fiji. What's good, my brother?
Was good, brother. Class intro. Class intro. I'm honored. Thank you for having me, man. And I'm excited for this.
Absolutely, bro. Like I said, you're the first two people I thought of for this discussion. And my man, the individual currently going through so much peak fiction, I don't know how he's here. You know what I mean? I got him at the latter half of like a legendary month, a legendary year. I've spoken to him multiple times, and I'm surprised I haven't been knocked out by the Conqueror's Hockey. You know what I'm saying? My guy, AJ, what's good, man?
What's up? Thanks, as always, for having me. I'm particularly excited for this one because I think I think there'll be a lot of like overlap in our tastes and the things we value, but also a lot of differences in our choices, obviously. Mm-hmm. So I just think it's a really cool thing to do and to look back on and to compare. And I'm just really excited.
100%. Yeah, like this is one of those things that I couldn't stop thinking about. I was like, dude, especially since we're about to do an arc ranking video slash street, whatever it ends up being over on the channel. I've been thinking a lot about rankings, and one of those things that I haven't been able to stop thinking about is characters, and I really wanted to capture our tastes as to where we are right now, like picking. So for everybody watching this video, the topic of the show today, of this particular podcast, is going to be all of us are going to present 10 characters. I mean, I know on my list I'm cheating a little bit, but we're not going to talk about that right now. 10 characters on paper that we're going to be discussing as like being representatives of our taste. So we're going to be doing a round table discussion going one by one. So we're going to end off with like 30-something characters at the end of this. Of course, on each individual list, it'll be around 10. So very much looking forward to seeing the characters that end up on both of your lists, since I've known both of you guys for a while, and knowing the characters and the stories that you guys enjoy. I'm looking forward to seeing the surprises that end up being on your list, as well as the characters that we could potentially have either overlap, or I know in order to stop the overlap from happening, maybe we'll, like, when somebody chooses a character, we won't choose that character. However it is that you guys want to do it. But I just really wanted to have a discussion about our favorite characters here, because I feel like that is probably my favorite aspect of storytelling, right there with of course the message and the themes that a story is trying to say, and the awesome moments that follow, but it's always the characters as a central focal point of that. And so today that is going to be the focus. Do you guys have anything that you would like to say before we get into our lists?
Nothing in particular.
Yeah,
ready to dive in. I think before we go through the list, though, maybe talk quickly about the thought process behind choosing these characters, because I know my approach was it wasn't tough per se, but I tried to. So the original idea was 10 favorite characters, right? Yeah. And that kind of evolved into 10 characters that best represent our favorites. And the main reason why I wanted that change is because if we did a top 10 characters, there would be like 9 main characters, 9 protagonists, and I'd have very similar things to say about a lot of them.
Yep. I feel you.
So I feel like this gives the conversation a bit more like breadth. But yeah, for me, I kind of just tried to pick 10 different characters who I love, with different distinct qualities, like the different main appeal of these characters. There's obviously some overlap. Some of these characters will be similar in a lot of ways or not similar at all, but that's kind of my main thing. A defining quality that differentiates the 10.
Sweet. What about you, AJ? Did you use a similar type of thing of measuring your list?
Not really, actually, which is really interesting. Mine's mostly, well, yeah, on a base level, it's just 10 characters that mean a lot to me and are very sort of significant and influential for me, in one way or another. And some of them are really I've known for a decade. Some of them I've just recently met in the past year or something. So just varying ways that they have had effects on me. And then when I say them, I'll explain why. But essentially, it's they just strike a deep chord, just on a fundamental level. And the way they do that could be very different. But yeah, mine isn't like, there are a couple that have some overlap with one another. So yeah, it's I just wanted to make sure there were no series repeats and that there were characters that I don't usually talk about a lot. So. Or like that aren't main protagonists most of the time. So like there's not going to be a Hinata Shoyo or a Gone Freaks or something like that, just because I talk about them a lot and people probably associate that with me. So I wanted to be a little different, not for every single one, but a little different.
Yeah, awesome. I love the categories on both of your lists. I went with a very simple approach of I attached a theme and a topic to a number and was like, all right, this character represents that best, and I feel like that represents my because I picked like 10 different things that I feel like best represent my not just my journey as experiencing all this stuff and as a creator myself, but also just I felt like what best represented my tastes and like the Recon core characters, if you will. So I have 10 themes or representative words attached to each individual character on my list, and just went off of that. I think, based on the list that I have, I feel like this could, on a given day, be my top 10 favorite characters of all time. On a given day, just looking at my list. But it because like Fiji said, that was originally what we were going to go for, but whenever we came up with this concept, I was like, you know what, this might even be even better. So I'm really, really excited, especially with the parameters at hand and knowing that all three of us came at this with a similar yet different goal in mind for our list. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Start us off, Fiji, man. What do you have? Do you have any honorable mentions, or do you want to get right into number 10?
I don't have any honorable mentions.
Okay.
I'll go straight in for number 10. I kind of this list was not very last minute. It was a bit last minute, finalizing it just now. I wanted to make some changes. I kept looking at it and thinking, wait, something could get changed a little bit. But this is what I landed on. And for number 10, I have Omar Little from The Wire.
Oh,
good pick.
Yeah. So with Omar, I think the main thing about him, the main appeal of his character for me, is how he exists as this kind of outlier within the story of The Wire. How he is just, how the main thing that tethers every other character together, that connects everybody else, he exists outside of, and how he's just so unique conceptually because of that. Like many people know, The Wire has the chess analogy or motif throughout the story, where everybody is a pawn on the board, or they have their role to serve, and they exist within these systems or institutions. And Omar has his own chessboard. He's playing his own games with his own rules, and that's such a important character to have in a story like The Wire. And I can't think of many other characters who are similar to this. I guess you could kind of put Ulquiorra there from a thematic perspective, because he kind of exists in contravention to everything every other character has, being alone. Every other character is grieving, or they have something associated to death, and he just can't rationalize that because he has no one. That's kind of similar in a very different way. But yeah, with Omar, that's the main appeal for me with him. The fact that he's just this complete outlier within the story of The Wire. And when I come across characters like that who are just distinct in their casts, I always kind of gravitate to them.
I love that pick, and that is definitely a Fiji pick. I know we've talked about Omar in the past, but man, that is definitely one of the greatest TV characters ever, and a huge shout out obviously to The Wire as a fantastic series. But I never made that connection to Ulquiorra. That's such a cool connection. You're absolutely right. That is super dope. I appreciate that.
Love to see it. I kind of just had to squeeze in some Wire
some bleach
because it's been.
I thought you were going to see some bleach.
Nah, with the Omar pick, the main thing was like I need to have a character from The Wire on here because it's been rotting my brain for the last while. The thing is with The Wire, I don't think any character from The Wire would probably make my top 30 or top 40 favorite characters because it's just not structured in that way.
Right.
If we're considering the city of Baltimore as a character, then that might be top 5, but obviously we're not. So yeah, it's one of them ones where I just wanted to squeeze something in, and Omar is definitely my favorite from The Wire. And yeah,
love to see it.
Omar Little, number 10.
That's a fantastic pick. Hopefully we will see the city of Baltimore at number 5. No, I'm playing. Go ahead, AJ, bro. What's your 10, man?
I need to continue The Wire one day.
You do
Definitely.
So this is a cheat. Well, actually, firstly, an honorable mention for me that I really wanted to put on here, but wasn't able to, is because I wanted a live action character and there are none. But one that almost made it was either Captain Flint or John Silver from Black Sails. And I know Fiji loves Black Sails, but have you seen it, Recon?
Bro? It is like the one that I've been wanting to watch for so long.
Yeah,
and every time you guys talk about it, I'm like, because both you and Fiji say it's a story about stories, and I'm like, I need to be in there, man. I need to.
Yeah. So either of them was really close to making it, but they didn't. But so my 10 is a cheat. So it's actually a 3-way tie because, like I said, I wanted this to be indicative of me as a person right now, and that is a lot of these characters I've loved for years and years. But a couple of them are more recent, and these are more recent. And one of the most recent things for me in the past couple of years has been getting into the big 3. And so I wanted a representation of that, but I didn't want to narrow it to one series, so I have one from each of them. And I tried to be a little unconventional with the pick.
Okay.
So I'll just do a little blurb on each of them really quick. So for the One Piece edition is one that isn't even in my top 20 One Piece characters, but I think is really, really important and really, really for me, and that is Big News Morgans.
My guy!
I think my love for the series skyrocketed around the introduction of him and where he properly came into the narrative, and there was a lot of other stuff like Reverie and Wano and Emu and stuff like that, but he was a big part of it as well. And I just love the sort of dualism between him being in some ways a very minor character, but in others one of the most important in the whole story. And I love how he sort of acts as a choir, as a sort of jester in a sort of way, and most of all how he's just an advocate of stories, of narrative. And that's super me, and that'll be on the list. That'll be with other entries as well. Going along with that theme is the Naruto edition, who is Jiraiya.
Nice.
Again, we talk all the time about stories. I think he's probably the best personification of that through the tale of Jiraiya and how that echoes sort of back and forth. And after his sort of arc, he just continues to grow in prominence throughout the narrative through that tale and the thematics associated within and the effect it has on the characters. So Jiraiya is not in my top 5 for Naruto, but again, he's one of the most important for me and a very me core character for that reason. And the last one is from Bleach, and it's tough because I'm currently reading it, but the one I chose for Bleach is Kenpachi. And that is, I've talked to Fiji a little bit about this, but essentially I think he's got to be the biggest personification, not just in Bleach, but all of Shonen. And Shonen is very near and dear to my heart. And I think there are a lot of ideas attached to him that I view as quite meta with regards to Kubo's thoughts on the genre. and some sort of quiet moments that speak very loud because of, I think, ways in which he could be projecting his own ideals about his craft and shonen in general. And he's just a really thrilling character all in all. And yeah, I really love him. And again, he's not currently not in my top 5, but I think he's one of the most important, and he really speaks to me a lot.
Man, big 3 rep in this video, dude. This is already off to a great start. We love to flip and see it, man. Yeah, no, great picks. Definitely AJ Core for sure. Man, dude, you guys absolutely killing it so far. Absolutely. Now, see, I'm even more glad that I have both of you guys on for this discussion. A few honorable mentions on my end before I get to my number 10. My first honorable mention is Simon from Gurren Lagann, a character that represents a lot of what I love in my stories to the absolute core. Unfortunately, was not able to make it to the list due to the parameters given, but that is a character I think about all the time and have thought about that character since like whenever I first watched Gurren Lagann in like 2007 or 8 or whatever it was. That's just a character I'll always adore. But going into the real honorable mentions, I'm a huge fan of any type of villainous organizations and or like antagonist organizations, and it pained me to not include like the organizations as a whole, similar to what Fiji said about the city of Baltimore. If I could include like certain villainous organizations, that'd make up like my entire list. So all love to the Phantom Troop, to like the Akatsuki, the Spada, Black Organization, Ouroboros, just to name a few. Like these organizations that represent so much of my love for certain series. I'm just a huge fan of that archetype in my stories. But starting me off here at number 10, last year I was studying perspective a lot in regards to the way that stories are told. And one of the stories that I was studying there is going to be the 10 Loves of Nishino. And the Hiromi Kawakami wrote this in 2013. And the character that I want to focus on here for perspective is Nishino. Now, obviously, I won't be getting into too many spoilers just in case anybody wants to read the book. But in essence, the story is told through 10 different perspectives on this one character. So, like, you never get the point of view from Nishino himself. But what you do get is 10 different accounts of how these individuals feel about this character. And they all have some sort of expression of love for this character. And the way that they express these things in regards to the character, and you get to see his flaws on full displays in, let's just say, like in the past, another one in the present, just seeing the full, the way that the picture, the puzzle pieces come together for the creation of this character, even though you never really actually get to meet them, is one of the coolest things I've ever seen in a story. And it's one of those ambitious things that speak to me. And so whenever something like this happens, especially in regards to switching point of views and allowing the readers to come up with their own interpretations of things based on the hearsay of the point of view that you're following, when you focus an entire novel on that, it hits entirely different. And so the concept character, obviously, we think of like Friend or Beatrice from Yumeneko as like these concept ideas that then flourish and become something of themselves through hearsay, through other people. This is one where it's like the accounts of an actual dude that you hear from 10 different people, and it's because of that it really sticks with me, and not just as a consumer of these stories, but also as a writer as well. So that would be my number 10, is Nishino from the 10 Loves of Nishino.
That sounds very the way you describe that sounds very Umineko to me.
Yes,
that's really interesting.
Yeah, it is very, very Umineko. Like I said, one of the characters I thought of the most was Beatrice. While thinking of Nishino, so definitely another story about stories there, but the way in which it's constructed is so immensely interesting. I haven't been able to stop thinking about it since I read it.
That's some great agenda pushing there.
You know what I mean? This is gonna be all agendas being pushed in this particular stream. In this particular discussion. So what is your number 9, Fiji? Push some agenda here, baby. Let me hear it.
Okay, so I'm kind of cheating here. We've got two characters sharing the number 9 spot from the same series who represent similar ideas, so it's not too much of a cheat. But this is a story all three of us are keeping up with, and it is Satoru Gojo and Ryomen Sukuna. So,
oh, nice.
For this number 9th pick, it's kind of similar to what AJ was talking about with Kenpachi being representative of shonen. When I think of battle shonen, I feel like one trend that's in all of these shonen stories is the strongest, the pinnacle, right? And how, like, that character that represents the strongest. And how these two characters go about exploring that concept is it's like one of the most fascinating takes on it for me. With Gojo, you have the strongest taken to its logical extreme. He's away for some of the series, for over half of the series, and you feel it every step of the way. Like he is the strongest. There's no question about it. And with Sukuna, I feel like you almost have a commentary on the idea of the strongest with him. With the main thing that you usually get attached to these characters who are the strongest in their respective verses is the idea of loneliness, and you have Sukuna just straight up rejecting that, saying, why would I need anybody else? Being completely self-sufficient. So those two characters at number 9, I feel like there's so much more to say on them as well. But it's battle shonen taken to its extreme with both of these characters. It feels like an ode to battle shonen, like with Gege commenting on the stories he grew up loving, and yeah, Gojo and Sukuna.
We love to see it, ladies and gentlemen. That was the current voice of Jujutsu Kaisen that was talking right there. Go subscribe to Radman. He's almost at 50,000 subscribers. He creates amazing JJK videos. If you want to hear more cooking in the facet in which you just heard it, definitely go subscribe to my boy, because he stays cooking on that JJK greatness. Appreciate that.
That's some agenda pushing.
That is some agenda pushing. Yes, sir.
Thank you, brother. Much appreciated, man.
Of course, dude. No, 100%. I completely agree. They very much represent shonen and the idea of the strongest. I remember you bringing that up in a video before, and I completely agree with that as a concept, which is why that entire, I can't wait for the anime to get to that stuff, so that discussion becomes more prevalent within our community. Super good stuff. But AJ, man, number 9.
Just before I say 9, I love Fiji's pick. I really, man, there's 10 is so few. Just to reiterate, I don't know if I said this, but like, these aren't my 10 favorite characters. Like, I was pretty clear about that with the 3 I picked before. It's just 10 characters that I really love for whatever reason that are really important to me. But like, I wish I could talk about JJ. Like, I wish we had 50 hours straight to talk. Mm-hmm. But that's why you guys are here to well, no, that's not why you were here. But like, part of the beauty of this is that you guys can say some of the things I wish I could put on my list, and that's one of them. So my number 9 would probably be, have either of you seen Shogen Roku Rakugo Shinju?
No, man. I started it and I was really enjoying it, but I need to get back on it because it was already very me.
Same thing as me. I've seen the first couple of episodes, but I suck with anime as a medium. I struggle committing to anime episodes. I'm a reader.
Okay, cool. So then I won't get into deep specifics or anything, but he isn't my favorite character in the series, but he is the one. These days, when I read stories or watch stories or play games or whatever, relatability doesn't tend to be a huge thing for me anymore. It used to be like 5, 6, 7 years ago, but it doesn't really crop up much for me. I guess it's just how I've started to change in recent years my relationship with stories and characters. I just don't think about it much. But this character is probably the most relatable character I can think of in terms of what he means, because Rakugo, obviously, it's a series about stories and art and life and expression, just in a broad sense. And this character has, better than any character I've seen, exemplified and expressed my philosophy on what I try to do with my presence on the internet, in terms of what I do, like with my content, which is basically try to be a conduit between a viewer and myself as well, and a story, and try to accentuate appreciation for that story as much as possible. This character is a fantastic personification of that through how he's explored and his role and his dynamics with other characters, and really helped Rakugo to go that extra step and be as strong of a favorite as it is for me. And yeah, Yotaro, he's an amazing character, and I imagine whenever you two get to it as well, like, you'll probably see a good amount of yourself in some things with him as well, just from the bits I know about you guys. So yeah, I guess that's one of my little agendas pushed. Number 9, Yotaro from Rakugo.
I really need to continue that series, but since we're on the topic of Rakugo, I'm going to push another agenda. Akane Banashi is phenomenal, ladies and gentlemen.
It is.
At this point in time, that is most certainly one of the series I look forward to reading each and every single week. If you're looking for something to read now that My Hero and JJK are coming to a close, Akane Banashi is definitely one of my favorites in the magazine for that Rakugo greatness. But yeah, no, I definitely need to watch that series, AJ, 100%. My number 9. Now, this is a character I have not been able to stop thinking about for the past 5 years. It is an individual that is only in one particular section of a beloved story, but nonetheless a character that resonates with me on levels I can't even begin to explain and or understand, honestly. And that is Yushiromiya Lion from Yumi Neko When They Cry. This is a character that represents for me like the reasoning I put behind it here on the list is the one in a million, the existence. I compare Lion to like the rarity of us, the rarity of like a single sperm cell making it to out of like hundreds of thousands, being able to be the one that actually gets born into a human being. Lion sort of represents that to me, like the 1 in 3 million chance to go out and make it into reality. And Yumi Neko obviously is about existence, or that's one of its major themes. And when in parallel with Beato, with Beatrice, it brings you have two characters as like this dynamic that brings into question what existence actually is, right? Because you have one character that has a legend and word of mouth proof by every single person in the story that it actually exists, and because of that, they quote unquote become real. And yet another has all the visual and audio proof you could ever need, and it does not exist at all. So it's like you have this really, really cool parallel with two characters that sort of represent the same thing, but you see it from entirely different poles. And it's so interesting in the way that it's done and executed, especially, like I said, with Nishino in the previous pick, when it's done through certain characters' POVs, and you see how they view both of those characters and how they either attach themselves to the fact that they do exist or that they don't exist. And of course, to believe that something exists, you, especially in this series, you need to love and or have that understanding of love to even begin to acknowledge their existence. And so I think that ultimately ends up being the thing that either disproves or proves their existence, literally within the story and to us as the viewer as well. And I think it's a representation of the way in which that we bypass logic sometimes to accept memories that we spent that are not wasted. For example, I always think of like Kingdom Hearts 358 and a half days whenever I think of something like this when it comes to do with memories as a concept. These things that we create that maybe to other people may not be as meaningful, but because you experienced it yourself and those memories are important to you, then you cannot toss that away. You couldn't even begin to throw that away. And so that in and of itself is existence. And similar to like when somebody has either an imaginary friend or an idea or a concept or a friend that you made only for a day and it sticks with you for the rest of your life. These memories are important to each individual person. And so when it comes to existence as a whole, especially in stories, I feel like I've never seen a better representation of that than Yoshinomio Lion / Beatrice, as like these two contrasting ideas. But in particular for Lion, because this is a character that really does not show up much within the series. The idea of this character's existence by itself sort of goes back to the Komugi Meruem thing of there could have been a million different realities, but the one that we're in is the one that you and I are in. Like I'm glad that this is the reality I was born into, so I could meet this person and play this game with them. That's sort of what was going on there with Yoshinomio Lion, and that's why I decided to go with this character as my number 9 as a representation of something that I really appreciate in my stories, which is whenever they delve into the meaning of existence as explored through the memories of the characters.
Wow. I love the Lion pick. I don't think I've seen... There's not nearly as much love for Lion in Umineko discourse that I've seen, at least, as there should be. So I love that pick and everything Lion represents.
100%.
I love
amazing.
the way you put all of that. I haven't seen Umineko, but it made me think of Yuji Atadori. Not gonna lie, with the recent developments. But yeah,
right.
I love how you put that.
No, that's actually a very, very good comparison. Actually, whenever I think of Lion, I tend to think of a lot of protagonists in that ilk, of the Yuji ilk. So that is actually a really, really good a really good parallel / connection there. But Fiji, man, you're number 8. Talk to me, bro.
My number 8. So I don't think either of you have read this manga, but it's number 8 is Ogata Hyakunosuke from Golden Kamuy.
Need to read it.
I've heard things.
Yeah, so I'm not gonna go too deep into specifics and spoilers and whatnot, but with the way Golden Kamuy is laid out, it's basically this big treasure hunt, and there's various conflicting factions and a lot of different parties. You've got military, you've got individual parties and whatnot. And Ogata, for me, is the third party chaos factor character. He's like your Hisoka, he's like Ganishka, kind of Orochimaru at parts, Littlefinger, Buggy recently, that kind of character. And just this unpredictable element in the plot with the power and credentials to just dramatically change everything about the story in a heartbeat. Like, he's just this constant force in the background that just has ridiculous presence and just kind of just steals the show when they're around. Just that third party chaos factor is how I'd put it. And even though they're not my favorite character in Golden Kamuy, they're my second favorite. They're probably one of the most integral to the experience as a whole. I feel like some areas of the story might have gotten a bit boring if it wasn't for their background lingering presence. So yeah, Ogata Hyakunosuke from Golden Kamuy is number 8.
I love the way that you put that, dude. Like, I know we've talked about that character before whenever you were trying to sell Golden Kamuy to me. And that it most certainly feels like one of the driving forces of why I want to check the series out. And you just drove that point home even more. I love characters like that. So to see another character, especially in a series like that, I know you've compared it to Gintama before.
Yeah.
To have a character in there like that, it sounds like something really, really cool. I can't wait to explore it.
Same. I don't know when I'll get to Golden Kamuy, but those sorts of characters are super up my alley, so now I'm even more tempted.
You'd love to see it. Agenda pushing is going successfully.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I'll tell you, this is the agenda video, yo. AJ, go ahead. Number what are we? 8? Yeah, 8. Number 8.
Okay, so this one is a really important character to me personally, for I guess more emotional reasons than I guess the reasons I've said so far. More because Yotaro is very intimate and personal, but this is I'm very emotionally connected to this character, and this is Shinobu Oshino, or
Let's go!
Kishshot from the Monogatari series. And it's interesting that you just talked about Lion, because I think of the Beatrice Lion dynamic very similarly to the way I do of the Shinobu alternate universe Kishshot that we see in Mayoi Jiangshi.
Great call.
I've always compared those two. It's like, and it's sort of the inverse of what you said, because essentially what we have here is a character who it's not a novel idea, it's not super unique, but it is so beautifully expressed and voiced and presented through visuals. This essentially this lonely soul who is just yearning for connection, seems to be cursed because of the lack of connection, and it's just so beautifully communicated, this desolation and loneliness. And it took me a couple tries to actually really immerse myself in Monogatari and really love it, but she was the constant and the thing that drew me closer and closer to it as I would watch it. It's just the way she's presented. You just want the best for her, and you just want her to be happy. So the dynamic that I really love, that's sort of the inverse of what you said, Recon, is we have this AU version of her who sees the version of her that we've been following, and who gets salvation through just seeing that in one universe out there, you can be this happy. Not even that I am happy, but that in some universe I am. It's good to know, like, that is enough to save her. And that how lucky we are to be following the universe where she has that, you know? Just all in all, an incredibly emotional, captivating, at times very fun, charming character. My favorite in Monogatari, she's been challenged in recent times by a character I think that might come up later. But
you better
still
believe it.
but still my favorite as of right now, and her dynamic with Araragi as well is one of my favorite in anything. So just a hugely emotional character for me, and one that I always try to just express love for whenever I can.
Such a great pick, man. I have so much love for that character. That is, I was talking to, shout out to my boy Hot Boy Spicy. Obviously, I think by the time that that this goes up, we did a discussion video talking about Monogatari, which I hope to get up as soon as possible. And within that video, we definitely went into a few things in regards to Shinobu and what a magnificent character she is. But man, I always appreciate getting to hear your perspective on Shinobu, because I know how much you love that character. So that was great. And like I said, the connection there as well with the Lion and Beatrice, it's like right there, man. It's right there. Mm-hmm. So I really do appreciate that. And that's super good pick. My number 8 goes into something that you started off with about it being a personal choice. It's probably the earliest that I remember really getting attached to a character. It's still to this day the character I think of whenever the term or concept of well written comes to mind. My number 8 is who I believe is the quintessential main protagonist that rests in between comics, sitcoms, serialized dramas, cartoons, and of course anime, and that is Usagi Tsukino, aka Sailor Moon, the main protagonist of that series. Usagi's always been really important to me. This is a character that I feel like, obviously, this is where I learned to really appreciate. This was like my first forte into finding my tastes in stories and what I appreciate in them at a young age. That and Dragon Ball, of course, obviously, I'll love to DBZ. But this was the really the one where I was like, man, to this day, this is, whenever I think of something being well written. Obviously, you'll hear fantastic characters being brought up, as they should be, especially since we're going to stick to television, because I always think of Sailor Moon more as a television character than a character within an anime and manga, because that's just the way the story is structured. So, like, let's just say comparing it to another legendary main protagonist, like we look at our Walter Whites, right, our Tony Sopranos. These are legendary main protagonists within the television medium, and I feel like what makes Usagi so interesting is that I would argue that Usagi is just as well written as any of those legendary characters, but in a completely different way. Whereas those characters, obviously, you see this huge overarching journey that they go through throughout the course of the narrative, and that becomes such a powerful point and part of the story that forever sticks with you. In Usagi's case, the writing is so well done, you don't even think about it. It's so fascinating to me how it's done. Within the first episode, you know exactly how this character is going to act, and through that repetition of seeing and knowing this character in each and every single episodic part of the story, you really come to know this character to the point where you can predict when she's going to do certain things. And even then, she is very unpredictable because she's just the most flawed individual you'll ever meet. And so one character that I wanted to have as like a sort of connection here is Shinji Ikari, another character I really love, which is from Neon Genesis Evangelion, one of my all-time favorite stories. And the thing that I think connects both of these characters is Usagi is sort of like the original I don't want to do that character, where we have an individual who's been thrust into a situation that she should not be in, and every single day complains about it. But at the end of the day, she's going to do what's right. And I think the interesting parallel between her and Shinji is, whereas Shinji's sort of representing all of Hideaki Anno's, like the representation of what he's currently going through within his mind, Sailor Moon sort of represents everything that Naoko Takeuchi read and or consumed before creating the series. She was a voracious reader who read a lot of different things before crafting Usagi, and you really get to see that because Usagi feels like a character that should not be in comics. Usagi feels like a character that it just like transcends. It's like if I were to ever teach a class on what to do at a stoplight, aka writing 101. This would be one of the characters I would have up there as like, in its simplest terms, when you break down storytelling into like its A's, B's, and C's, Usagi Tsukino is that. That is what I think of whenever somebody says the term good writing. Because to me, good writing has always been, if you know and or understand a character enough to where when they're going to do something or a certain thing in the plot is developing and is due to this certain character that I'm discussing, and or you know what they're going to do once something happens, that to me is a fantastic character. And so at its core, at its base structure, trimmed down to be understood by both adults and children alike, Usagi Tsukino represents what a well-written character is for me, has since I was 5 years old and still does so today, 20-something years later. And so she will always be a character that I absolutely love and appreciate, but she represents truly what a well-written protagonist is in my mind, and that's why I have her on my list to represent that.
That is, man, my backlog is just getting bigger because I've never seen Sailor Moon.
Sailor Moon
but,
boy.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh boy. I've never seen Sailor Moon, but I know that a lot of stories I really like have been influenced by it. Same with Dragon Ball Z. So it's always so enticing to want to go back to it to see the foundations that were laid and where the influence came from. Mm-hmm. And so comparisons like that to like Shinji and Eva, and that like how, buttoned up and beautiful and tight the writing is, makes it really enticing. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, it's like I said, it's like a character for me at least that transcends anime and manga because it is structured in a very like. If you ever do get a chance to watch it, you'll see almost immediately, like man, this feels like a cartoon I watched as a kid. Because it is. I honestly feel like after that series released in '92, it sort of changed the way cartoons are written all around the world. And so, like, you'll see story beats that you remember from, like, Ed, Edd n Eddy or any of those, like, classic cartoons that we watched. They all find origins or some way, shape, or form back to that show. Even at its highest form, things like Wizards of Waverly Place, Sabrina the Teenage Witch literally gain everything that they have thanks to that show. So there's a lot of stuff there that originates with Sailor Moon. But Fiji, man, number 7.
Okay, I love that we started talking about inspirations and like the blueprints and the stories of today taking from Sailor Moon and whatnot, because my number 7 pick is less about the character and more about the concept. But I'll talk about the character specifically. But there's kind of like 4 or 5 different characters. None of these would be very strong favorites, but I adore this concept. And it's basically what you just said with inspiration within the story as a character for the MC. So the blueprint or prototype for the main character. And the character I have here is Portugas the Ace.
Oh, let's go.
And
baby.
some other thoughts, some other characters that I have listed under him are Skull Knight, Kai and Shiba from Bleach, the Little Giant from Haikyuu, and kind of Kojiro from Vagabond, although that one's a bit different. But this is kind of the parameters for this concept are kind of wide, but it's basically a character that exists as this kind of benchmark or role or position or ideal or whatever for the main character to reach, which can be subverted in some ways with Ace. And what I love about with Ace is both of you guys know I'm not the hottest on Wano as an arc, but what Wano did for Ace for me, it has elevated him so much. He was a character I was always a staunch defender of. I've always loved his character. The ASL flashback is one of the peaks of the series for me. Marineford and everything. But what Wano did for him with just adding a whole new complexion to his character, to his dynamic with Whitebeard, to his dynamic with Luffy, with him kind of being this failed joy boy, and Luffy kind of being this accidental chosen one that was never supposed to be, completely just transformed the character for me, because I'm just a sucker for this idea in stories where you have this character who treaded a similar path to the main character at one point in the past, or they're in a position. Little Giant is another great example of a subversion of this, like probably the best example of this being
Definitely.
Yeah, so yeah, Ace at number 7.
I love that, bro. Yo, 2 One Piece picks so far. We love to see it, man. Shout out to Ace. Everybody, One Piece greatness each and every single week on Weekly Shonen Jump Sundays at 11 o'clock. Go ahead, AJ. Number 7.
And I'm sure we're gonna be done at 2 One Piece mentions, right?
You know.
We'll see. So next for me, because mine isn't in order, I'm just seeing which one I want to say next. I think it'll be. Okay, I'll do this one. This is one of the OGs for me. This is one of the most important characters for getting me into anime in general and continuing with it and wanting to try to dissect and understand characters. It's a character from Fate Zero, which is one of the most influential stories I've ever experienced, because this is there's been works in my life that have gotten me into stories. So Paper Mario, the video game, was the first time I got immersed in a story. It was the first time I experienced something, and I'm like, wow, I think narrative is really cool. Not that I knew what narrative was when I was 7 or 8, but like I just wanted more of that.
Right.
So Paper Mario was, I guess, the most influential because it was the first one. But there are stepping stones throughout my life of ways that I wanted to explore fiction and turning points. And Fate Zero was the first story that made me really want to try to dig into characters and character psychology and themes. And there are multiple characters I could have chosen for this. The way Fiji described Ogata from Golden Kamui is very Gilgamesh from Fate Zero for me, and he is huge. He was a huge character for me. But the one I want to say is Ryder, or Iskandar from Fate Zero, who's in and of himself a really interesting and fun, like in terms of, like, you think of stories that have tonal balancers. For example, Hisoka in York New. I think in any given arc that Hisoka's in, he provides the perfect tonal balance. Mm-hmm. In York New, he's this chaos factor. In The Hunter's Exam, he provides this ominous threat and sort of glimpse into the dangers that were to come. In Greed Island, he's a protagonist almost. To balance things out, he returns in the election. So Ryder is kind of like that for Fate Zero. I fully believe that without Ryder and Waver, who's his partner, Fate Zero would not work as a story without what they do to contrast it. And I think sort of he's the sort of character that really engages you through being incredibly likable and charismatic and just very engaging on a sort of outward shallow level. But digging deeper into it, you see how Fate Zero ticks as a story, how everything functions together, how contrast works in stories. Like, he's essentially the character that taught me about thematics and using contrast as a narrative tool to provide a message. And along with that, he's one of the most inspirational characters for me, and a character whose themes integrate with some of the things I take away from Hunter x Hunter or Haikyuu. So yeah, Iskandar or Ryder, one of my favorite characters ever, and one of the most formative for me as well.
You know what's crazy about that pick, dude? If I'm not mistaken, I believe either the second video or the third video I ever saw from, or third video I ever saw from you was you talking about your love for Ryder. If I'm not mistaken. So it's like me going back in time and reliving that right then and there through the Fate Zero greatness. That is definitely an AJ pick, and I appreciate that so much because Ryder is such a great character. Man, yeah. My number 7. So I think everyone in this call and everyone that knows me knows that I love the legendary character in each series, right? Like, you think of Goldie Roger, you think of Vongola Primo, you think of Jing Freaks, the characters that like within each of like the main series that are like these like for the fourth Hokage, Minato. Where it's like these legendary characters that once you actually get to meet them, like or see them within a flashback, whatever the case may be, you see that how they are represents the story itself / the hypest moments is always surrounding those characters, and that's why I've always loved those characters. And I feel like the one character that I feel represents the legendary character better than any other series is Kazuma Kiryu from Yakuza, man. That to me is the single greatest quote unquote legendary character you could ever have. Like, for anyone who's never played Yakuza and is listening to this, imagine being able to play through Roger's journey, through Goldie Roger's journey, or play through Jing Freaks' journey. Like, most of the time in stories, we don't get the opportunity to do that because they want these characters to remain legendary. What Yakuza does instead is it puts this character as the main protagonist in the story and allows you to play the journey to becoming that legendary character. But at the same time, because of that, you see all of the downsides and how the legend sometimes lies in certain ways in regards to the actual thing that is behind it, similar to how One Piece does with Luffy, and how like the world government will say one thing about him, or Big News Morgan will say one thing about him, but in actuality it's something completely different. We get to see all of that through Kazuma Kiryu. I feel like another character I could obviously connect to him is like Isakata Gintoki, as these characters who represent not only just family and how once you've grown up to a certain point, you realize your role within life, and you go out and everything in your past comes back to attempt to bite you, but you press on and you continue moving forward. Kiryu represents so much. He means so much to me as a protagonist, but I feel like at its core, when I first started playing this series, that was the thing that resonated with me and still continues to resonate with me to this day, is because I love the Vongola Primos and the Jings and the Shanks and Rogers of the world. To actually be able to play through a series that allows you to play as that character, and then when you switch off from that character into a random POV or something, you get to see like, nah, the character you're playing is actually like the legend of legends. It's just it doesn't feel like that at times because of how trollish she could be, which is what makes it work so well. And I really love Kazuma Kiryu. Such a silly guy, but he truly is one of my favorite characters of all time, and he had to have some sort of representation on this list. I absolutely love that character.
Okay, there's our first overlap.
Let's go.
Because I had him. I think I'm gonna stick with it though. I think I won't use my alternate for that one. I'll stick with it. So we'll have one repetition at least.
Perfect. Yeah. This way we'll have agenda pushing from both of us for Fiji.
Exactly.
Yeah, that sold me, man. Saying get into play as Roger.
I'm telling you, bro. Yeah, man. Go ahead, Fiji. Number six.
Number six. Okay. This one had to be in here, and spoiler alert: there's gonna be another character from this series in here because I just had to. And number 6 is Matahachi Honiden from Vagabond.
Yeah.
Nice.
My guy.
Yeah, for Matahachi, there's a few other characters that strike me as similar to him. You've got one from another Inoue manga, Real. You've got Takahashi. You've got Christopher Moltisanti from The Sopranos, who I think is similar to him in some regards. You've got Ziggy from The Wire, and I'm sure there's many others. But these are basically characters who are constantly being hit over the head with what they should do and what they can do, but just cannot help but fall into their vices over and over again. And you're just following this journey, and you so desperately want them to do the right thing, to improve and progress. And at times they've almost lost you, but you just, it can be painful even at times, like seeing how pitiful they can be and the lows they reach. And it's just such a compelling and honestly, in a way, it's painfully relatable in some ways. I think Matahachi is a character that we all have. Some of us, all of us have some Matahachi in us,
right?
And a lot of people probably take a lot of offense to that because he's so hated and disliked. But I do think he's just so painfully real. I think he's such an important balance and counterweight in the story as well to Musashi, who his story can get a bit lost in the abstract sometimes, and he's reaching for these like insanely idealistic goals, whereas Matahachi just wants to stop lying. He just wants to live a normal life and be able to wake up in the morning and not feel like he hates himself. And within that spectrum between Musashi and Matahachi, I think that's where the real meat of Vagabond is for me, where like the essence of the story lies between these two characters. I think Matahachi is like the realistic yet dark mirror of Musashi in a lot of ways, where it's really emphasized how pitiful he is, but then you think about the things Musashi has done wrong, and they're arguably, not even arguably, I'd say they're just flat out a lot more heinous than the bad things Matahachi has done. And you just think of that, and it's just, yeah, they might be my favorite dynamic ever. I'm not too sure. John Silver and Flint from Black Sails are a strong contender, but lately this dynamic has just, not even lately, ever since I first read the manga, they've just been rent-free. But yeah, Matahachi for me at number 6.
It's a fantastic pick, bro.
I love that. When I was reading Vagabond a few years ago for the first time, I think he was the most important character for my continual enjoyment of it, because of how lofty and abstract it can get, and like up in the clouds in the most beautiful way. But he was like right in the perfect moments. He was always there to ground it and offer a counterweight and sort of humanize the story in a way that 100%. I think is really essential, aside from just being the sort of character I really love, just because I love, as Fiji put it, like very raw, real, the ugliness of humanity just personified in a character. So I love that Fiji said that, because I could have if there was like 20 or 25 spots, but man, what a great character.
100%.
You love to see it. Matahachi GOAT. More people need to put respect on his name.
They do.
It's seen as like blasphemous to have him as your second favorite above Kojiro, and I'm like, the gap between the two is astronomical for me. I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, Matahachi GOAT.
Listen, anybody who's questioning anything on your Vagabond list, I don't know what they're doing. Like this is the Vagabond, man, you know what I mean? Like definitely man, the way, especially the way that you presented it, 100%. What a fantastic character. AJ, go ahead, man. Number 6.
So one of mine is spoiled because of Kiryu, but I think I'll wait a little bit before saying him. I think for number 6, I want to say a character that's been that I've loved for a few years now, but who's recently just taken that extra level to one of my absolute favorites of all time, and that is Aerith Gainsborough.
Let's go! Let's go, man!
To me, one of the most inspirational characters I've ever seen, with fantastic dynamics and thematics everywhere, beautifully presented in both languages I've played and heard Rebirth and Remake in, and of course in the original, beautifully presented in through visuals and dialogue. But it's almost like hard to describe the reasons for which I love her, because that's a whole rabbit hole of context to establish. But essentially, I think that Remake and Rebirth, without getting too deep into it, because I know Fiji's in the middle of his journey through that, I think it has some of the most important things you can say in stories to say in its story. And I think that Aerith is the most important character for saying those things. And so far, 2 out of the 3 entries in, and the original as well, they haven't gone a foot wrong with her presentation and her writing and her execution. She hits on an emotional level. She's incredibly inspiring. She's so charismatic and fun and empowering through the way that she views the world, given the darkness that she's gone through, while also being incredibly meta. And you can cry about her for days on end, but then you can think about her for days on end. And a great amount of my love, not a great amount, but a significant amount of my love for her lately, and the reasons I think about her lately, is because of a theory that both of us have that we talked about in our Rebirth podcast. So that isn't set in stone, but I think it's a very plausible one, and story's interpretation, and I think everything's there for that. So basically, TLDR, Aerith is one of the greatest characters in gaming, in fiction. She's an all-rounder. It's not like she's a jack of all trades and she's very good in everything. She's masterful in everything. Every element of character writing, every element of character presentation, and more than anything, she is just heart and soul. She just jumps off the screen, and she's sort of comfort food at the same time.
Yes.
She's just like this warm blanket that inspires you and makes you, empowers you. I imagine in many years going forward, I'll continue to revisit some of the things some of the ideas that are associated with Aerith for hope and inspiration and things like that. So she's more than a character. She's a life-changing experience of a character to me.
Oh man, spoke to my soul with that one, brother. If you guys could hear me applauding, I was applauding over there. That character means so much to me. Obviously overlap on that one too, but I'll switch to another FF7 character later on. I was going to talk about 2 characters. That was one of my cheating, but since you talked about one, I'll take this opportunity to talk about just Aerith in this one. Just a quick brief thing. Aerith Gainsborough means so much to me on a lot of different levels, and without getting obviously into spoilers, I feel like if you were to ask me who obviously favorite characters ever, I would have to put Aerith at number 0, because it's so hard for me to compare the amount of love I have for this character. When Remake came out, each and every single time that any of the original notes, flowers blooming in the church, the Aerith theme, any of those motifs would play, a tear would exit my eye, and it would mainly be for... It felt like meeting a friend again for the first time in like 20 years. You know what I mean? Like, Aerith feels like the friend character, the friend that everyone wishes that they had. An individual who obviously embodies everything that you said so brilliantly and eloquently there. But in Aerith's case, it's like whenever she's on screen, it's sort of what I like to say with the Chimera Ant arc, where Hunter x Hunter feels like the most enjoyable thing ever when you're watching it. And obviously it is one of the most enjoyable things ever. But specifically whenever you're in like the 24-minute thing of either a watch or a rewatch, your eyes are glued for those 24 minutes, soaking in each and every single part of it because of how brilliantly executed those episodes are. I feel that way about Aerith. Aerith is my Chimera Ant arc, where every time this character is on screen doing anything, I'm like, God, Sakaguchi and Kitase, and it's like, you guys got it, man. You understand the vision, the situation, the assessment at hand. Like, it's just a character that obviously makes me smile, makes me emotional. Is an all-around brilliant character, and one that, crazy enough, anytime that I talk to somebody's memories about FF7, you can't talk about the original game without somebody being like, yeah, thing I remember most is in some way, shape, or form Aerith / things that happen within the narrative and obviously the main protagonist and a lot of different things. But with Aerith just as a character and an on-screen presence, it's difficult to find a character with as big of a positive on-screen presence as Aerith. Like there's characters like Luffy and Naruto. I think Luffy and Naruto are like the ones that I would have to think of that, in regards to being like, once you finish seeing them on screen, you want to be like, man, I'm trying to change my life for the better. That's how I feel about Aerith. It's definitely I love her so much. So great pick, dude. Great pick. So going into my number 6, this is another one of my ties, represented by the term revenge. Revenge is obviously a thing within stories that is one of the most used storytelling archetypes that you will see. A revenge for one thing or another, it's bound to pop up in one of your stories, and I want to stress here that these two dynamics that I'm going to name, because it's 4 characters, but the dynamics are very, very important and integral to understanding one and the other, at the very least for me. So I have Lise and Maruna from the webtoon Kubera, and I have Guts and Griffith from Berserk. And I feel like what they represent is very different, but they both taught me about how revenge is sort of executed within stories. Obviously, we have characters like Sasuke Uchiha and Kurapika, who have their own interpretations within their stories that work extremely well. Count of Monte Cristo. There's so many characters that have done revenge stories really, really well. But from the first time I ever saw it executed in the way that it was in Berserk, it's always left a lasting impression on me. In particular, for the way in which we sort of see the story in the Golden Age progress as a Hajime no Ippo-esque situation, where you see both of the boxers about to enter the ring, and you really don't know what the outcome is going to be. And because you know the backstories for both of these characters, sometimes you don't even know who to root for. And so as you're going through the Golden Age, you're seeing, obviously, both of these characters as main central focal points, and understanding why they do each and every single thing that they do. And I'm going to talk about Griffith a little bit later on for another character that I really love. But since we're talking about this specific dynamic here, as the story progresses and you see how that fuels both characters in one way or another, the events that take place because of revenge being at the central focal point, it sort of forever shifted the way that I look at stories, and viewing it through that lens. Lise and Maruna from Kubera is very, very different. This is talking about the concept of revenge through 2 characters that it like I said, it could be seen as similar, but the way in which it's executed is completely different. But because I viewed it through the lens of what I believed was the apex of this, in Guts and Griffith, 2 characters that I absolutely adore, when I got to Kubera and I saw the way that this story was being executed, I was already viewing it through that lens, so I had very high expectations. What Kubera does is it adds the Count of Monte Cristo / classic archetypes that you normally see in these revenge stories, and you explore it through both the character that is trying to get revenge and the character who is trying, or is the character is trying to get that revenge on. So like on both characters, you're seeing their journeys as to how this is really, really impacting them. In terms of the way their journeys go in one way or another, and how they progress because of that. And as the story continues onward, and we continue to follow those two as the main central point of views, sometimes for such a prolonged period of time, you forget who the main protagonist is at certain points. It is very much a novel structured story where you could compare it to any of the epic fantasy novels where they spend a long time in a certain point of view before going back to another one. But I think what makes Kubera so special is that it gives you that time to sympathize and empathize with characters that at first seem like they were completely unsympathizable, similar to someone like a Griffith. And you add these little small pieces of humanity to these characters that ground them, so that whenever they do what they do, you understand both where the character is trying to get revenge is coming from, and the individual whom they're trying to get their revenge against is also coming from. What Kubera does is you get that obviously at the forefront, but then you follow both characters' journeys to the point to where you don't want either of them to continue on this thing any longer, because you see how much this is either ripping them apart and or there is a better solution at hand. So it's a really, really interesting way in which the stories go about it. I could talk about Lise and Maruna forever. Both of them could have a place in my top 10 favorite characters of all time for very, very different reasons. But I think their dynamic is one of the greatest dynamics I have ever seen in any story, and it only continues to get better as Kubera progresses. So that would be my number 6.
God damn.
The backlog getting bigger.
Yeah, I've heard generally I've heard about Kubera, but I don't think I've ever talked to anyone who I guess spoke in specifics or spoke that highly about it. So that's like, I wasn't expecting that. Just I don't know. I didn't know that you'd experienced it. So that's amazing. And right. Comparing it to one of the best dynamics in fiction is pretty heavy praise indeed, to say the least.
Yeah. It's trust me, I wouldn't have them there if they didn't at the very least have like some sort of connection. Like I said, after Guts and Griffith, that is how I view anything that even has like an inkling of a revenge story / like dynamic of that nature. I'm viewing it through that lens. And so when I saw what was being cooked here in Kubera, I was like, oh man, like there was a lot to live up to there, but my God, they cooked. You know what I mean? They cooked. But Fiji, man, we're heading into the top 5. The first individual who is going to be leading us in the top 5. Get us in there, brother.
Yeah. Top 5, but my list isn't really
right.
But yeah, for number 5, I fucking adore this concept. Whenever I see this in a story, it's like, just by virtue of the concept, I don't even need to know anything about the character. They're immediately at least A tier. You know what I mean? Like this is a concept I adore, and it's the you started this story character, and I have Grisha Yeager.
Oh, nice.
So characters like Jing, Thors from Vinland Saga, the man Gold D. Roger, a certain character from Golden Kamuy, those kinds of characters where they are the linchpin, the thing that sets the story in motion. And with Grisha, I mean, the term you started this story obviously comes from him, and I think he is the pinnacle of this concept, because in a story that is fundamentally about freedom, you have this character who is a slave to the story itself. Like, I think, I don't know if you guys, I know AJ watched that. I don't know if you watched it, Recon, but I made a video recently on, not recently, it's probably a year ago now, on Yuji, and how he kind of has this narrative thinking, and he kind of views the world and his life like he's the main protagonist in a story. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that applies to Grisha to the T. I think he has delusions of grandeur at moments. You see him when he's with the restorationists and leading them, the way he sort of romanticizes his role in the world with Zeke, and how he's also like he embodies all the main themes of Attack on Titan and all the main ideas, the sins of the father, the generational trauma, the cyclical conflict. Like, you have him as a child hating his father's blindness, and you see him as a father, you know, perpetuating those same problems. And it's just Grisha, man. Grisha. I don't know where to take this. I could talk about him forever. I adore this character. Every panel he's on screen is massively contributory to making him a better character. He's just I don't know. For a long time, I liked him more than Eren. I don't anymore. That's changed, but they're not far off from each other. He's one of my favorite characters ever, without a doubt, and one of the most efficient, without a doubt. He's just Grisha Jaeger. Yeah.
I love that pick so much, because for so many years before we had context on, or we barely have that, but before I had more context on Joy Boy, Grisha was always my Joy Boy. Like, I would look at Grisha and be like, that's what I think Joy Boy is going to be. Like that type of character. So you comparing the character obviously to Jing, and assuming like Minato and Roger, like characters who set so many things into motion. That is so true, so true. Man, what a fantastic character. I love Grisha too. I'm so glad you brought him up. Shout out to Attack on Titan, man. Great series.
Shout out to Attack on Titan.
Pretty good, not bad. So my number 5, I don't know. I guess I'll do a quick blurb about Kiryu and then do one of my. I'll do one of my alternates as well. And why not? So just everything that Recon said about Kiryu is absolutely true. You live the life of a legend and see how that legend comes into place. But something as well that I love about his character is how unbelievably intimately they explore his thoughts on that legacy and on other people's perception of him, of his connections, his regrets, the things he really regrets, and at times how hard it is for him to see the things that he's done well because of the negatives of the legacy that he's left behind, or some things that the way that his regrets echo over time and how loud that can seem. His relationships, like there is no stone unturned. How he reflects on character relationships he's had in the past, the legacy that they've left, his relationships with them, the type of mark he wants to leave on the world. Just everything about his life is examined with a fine-tooth comb. So you have the legend come into place, but you also have the monolithic figure of that legend reflect on all of that, from the most personal, unbelievably visceral, intimate, deliberate fine-tooth comb and magnifying glass that you could possibly get. So there's a beautiful sort of dualism to that makes him one of the best characters I've ever seen. So just to add to that from what you said, Recon. So this is, again, these are, just like Fiji said, these aren't ranked, and these are 10 of my favorite characters. So this being a fill-in doesn't mean that they're less important than any of the other ones. But I'll continue the Attack on Titan theme with, and hear me out, anyone who might be jumping to conclusions because of discourse this character gets, but Flock. I think Flock is I think one of the most, if you're looking at pure writing in the series, is one of the most well-written characters in the series. Like, I think it's hard to find many more that are technically as well-written as him. I think he's the perfect antithesis and antagonist to show and exemplify all that the story's about. His misunderstandings, the sort of bastardization of the legacy, speaking of legacy, that Erwin leaves behind, and how he picks that up, and how he has these extremely notable foils with Jean, but then goes in a totally different way because of the different ways in which he views survival in the world and the slippery slope that is. Flock is a character to me that is one of the most important in the series, and unfortunately one of the most widely misunderstood. But at the same time, I don't think I would change anything about the way that he's written, because I think he does all that he needs to do, and he's a sort of character that really grew on me over the years and sort of had me fine tuning the sort of things I look for in characters, and my sort of breadth and scope of how I can appreciate the way the characters are written. I think he's one of those contrast characters. There is no one. Well, there are characters like him in the story, but they are nameless and they are the result of his actions. And essentially, just I think he strikes this really amazing mix between being so beautifully human, kind of the sort of things we were talking about with Matahachi in some ways, but also being a cautionary tale, being a foil with other protagonists who are extremely human as well, but make the better decision, or a different decision that ends that is more in line with the themes of the story and all that sort of thing. I just think he's all around phenomenally written and presented in the anime, especially amazing voice acting, and I just always come back to him as a character that every year I look back as I do my rankings and lists, and I just go like, no, he's not falling off. In fact, he just gets higher and higher every year. I think he's amazing.
Man, when we started this, I was not expecting to hear Flock's name being brought up. That is an amazing plot twist, and I agree with everything you said. I agree with everything you said, man.
Yeah, same. That was that. Yeah, Flock needs more appreciation. I feel like he does get a bit of appreciation, but like I like how you went into him there.
Right. Yeah, no, that was a masterclass on Flock right there. Ladies and gentlemen, Flock, Attack on Titan. Watch it, read it, experience greatness. Now, going into number 5 here, I know earlier my boy AJ brought up the legendary Shinobu Oshino, a.k.a. Kiss Shot Asurora Heart Under Blado. But now, that is a character that, for sure, I absolutely adore with every fiber of my being. The other character I think that he was referring to is the character that I have as my profile picture right now, which is the incredible, the amazing, representing the concept and idea of creation is Nadeko Sengoku. This character means everything to me. Off concept, off execution, there's so much that goes into it. Immediately, I thought of Tom from One Piece as well as Vegapunk. They both represent a lot of similar things in regards to creation and believing in your creations even after they've left your own hands, which obviously goes into other characters that go into creation, like the main protagonists of Billy Bat in the Kevins, the main protagonists in Blue Period. Any character that has to do with creation in regards to manga, storytelling, anything, and or even when it comes to, like I said earlier, with Tom and Vegapunk in creations of either artificial life and or individuals that are in like carpentry and they treat their creations with as much love as someone who's writing their own story. Nadeko Sengoku represents all of that. But rather than going into what that is in regards to her character, instead, I want to focus on the way that Nisio Isin spoke of this character in an afterword during Monster Season. And without delving, obviously, into spoilers, it's just going through Nadeko Sengoku's the creative process behind behind this character. And so, in an afterword in Monster Season, Nisio Isin was reflecting on the idea that he couldn't believe where Nadeko was at this point in time, because this was not the original intent for this character. And what's fascinating is he then brings up the idea that Araragi Tsukihi was supposed to be the quote-unquote secondary protagonist that he sees Nadeko's role sort of being at the point in which we are right now in the anime. And it's so fascinating because he then goes on to state that Nadeko, what happened with Nadeko sort of taught him about the way that character writing should be. And it resonated with me a lot from one author to another, because he every single time before and afterward, and especially during the 100th volume of Monogatari, he goes into this deep thing apologizing for not being able to execute what he originally had in mind, but the characters took over and made something of their own. This is something from the very first episode of Bake until where we currently are right now that he continues to struggle with. What he considers a struggle. A creative struggle, where he'll go in with one plan in mind and the characters completely take over. And the representation of that is Nadeko Sengoku. And we see her go through a character arc where Nisio Isin explores his creative process with Nadeko through Nadeko as a character. It's a very, very cool meta commentary on the art of creation, except you see it through a story arc. So with Nadeko, it's so fascinating because there's obviously a lot of different things in regards to the way that the character is structured, just in regards to her arc. But I think the most fascinating part is that he didn't plan any of it. It was all as meticulously crafted as we believe her character arc is, and it most certainly is. He didn't craft any of it. It was all spur of the moment. It was that is Nadeko Sengoku represents Nisio Isin's creative process, which is an individual when they truly become themselves, when they become their own character, they start writing their own story. And so, as going back to the Tom and Vegapunk thing, once something takes life, you cannot stop it from doing so. All you can do is support it from that point onward, and we see that explored through Nadeko, and it's so cool. In that Nisio Isin was not only open in telling the viewers, no, I didn't plan any of this. This happened on of its own. It sort of makes me appreciate him as a storyteller even more, to the point to where you obviously are willing and open enough to say it, but to actually execute it, you don't have to submit that first draft. You can look at it and be like, no, this is not what I originally had in mind, but it's what the character said, so here you go. And the fact that he does that through all of his characters, as represented through Nadeko, to me, is not only what makes Monogatari special, it's what makes characters special. And so, when I think about creating characters in my own stories, I always think back to what he said about Nadeko, in which they may not always follow the plan, but that's okay. Because sometimes what you had planned doesn't even compare to what the characters themselves wanted to write instead. And so that's why Nadeko Sengoku is my number 5.
Beautiful. I didn't know any of that about the creative process behind her and the behind the scenes stuff. So I think that elevates her a decent bit, even still, given the sort of meta aspects to her character and how that reflects upon her creator.
Right.
But man, the latest arc and all that's it's one of the best arcs, and she's easily one of the best characters. 100%. And I think you expressed that beautifully. She's such an important character too.
Right. It's wild. Going back to what Nisio Isin said, it's kind of wild for us as the viewer to be like, how do we get here? It's like, man, we remember how she was at the beginning. It's like, man, oh man. Yeah, definitely. For anybody who has not experienced Monogatari, of course, highly recommend it. And there's overlap with a series here on both of our lists. You already know its greatness on that end. But Fiji, man, number 4, the big Ulquiorra number, El Cuarto Espada.
Number 4. This is a character who, a later pick, they kind of fall under that category as well. But this is a different category, which I would say is the main appeal of this character for me. And that is the idea of loss. And this is Guts. I don't think it gets better than Guts when it comes to just loss as a whole. Characters just defined by their backstories, their trauma, things they've lost. And so some other characters I think of on this train of thought is like Flint from Black Sails. Gintoki, I think, is similar in a lot of ways. Pretty much every single character in Golden Kamui. Askeladd, these characters who have lost something and they are basically strugglers and are persisting in spite of that loss and grappling with that loss. And with Guts, for me, what really brings him together for me is just how, I think you were talking about this earlier, about how I think it was when you were talking about the Sailor Moon character, how the mark of a well-written character for you is a character where you are presented with the scenario and you know this character so well, they're so well developed, you know what their response will be in any given scenario. With Guts, I think it's kind of the opposite of that, where I think he's just such a deeply traumatized character. He's so mentally unstable for large parts of the story, not the whole thing, that you don't know what to expect from him because he's gone through so much and he's lost so much. And you have stuff like the Winter Journey, where you're following him at his absolute lowest, and the base, I would consider that probably Guts' lowest point. That's probably a bit of a hot take with post Eclipse and whatnot, but for me the Winter Journey is him having to be Casca's guardian and essentially have that reminder of his loss shoved in his face throughout the whole thing. He doesn't have anything he can deflect to. He doesn't have any escape that he can use as a coping mechanism. He can't even be thinking about just venting his anger and slashing down demons, because that would put the one thing he has left, and it's not even in that same state anymore, at risk. So Guts for me is just, I think loss, I don't think I've seen a better depiction of losing something than Guts.
100%.
And that's a idea that will always resonate very strongly with me. Just the whole idea of loss and losing something or someone or wherever it might be.
I love that, dude. Obviously, I had Guts on my list earlier, and I'm so glad that you had that you placed him on there for that reason, because you're absolutely right. He's a character, obviously, because he represents loss. There's so many of us that can resonate with that, because we all experience loss in either its smallest form or its biggest form. And I feel like he's a great representation of how to carry on even with that loss. And
yeah, I love that you said even in its smallest and biggest forms, because you have stuff like Spring Flowers of Distant Days, where it's you explore it on both ends with Guts. You have him. It's just the idea of loss as a whole is every nook and cranny of that is explored with Guts, and there's also the realization side of loss, which is just as important, with him coming to terms with the loss and how gradual and cyclical and difficult that is with him, one step forward, two step backwards at times, or just slowly, gradually getting over that hump. And the Berserk reread is needed. It's been like 4 or 5 years since I last read the series, and it's desperately needed, because that is a special character.
Yeah, man. Go ahead. I was going to say one more thing before you go. The one of the things I love about Guts so much is riding off of what you were saying right there for the ways in which that is represented in all different aspects. I love how Guts is able to connect with the characters that he meets later on in the journey because of that. It's a desire to not lose these things once more that leads him to make so many different decisions, going back into your unpredictability thing from earlier. It's such a brilliant way to tackle it, because you obviously have a character who's gone through so much, but once he gains something once again that he wishes to protect, just like what he originally lost, it then adds a different layer of like, yes, I'm still on this quest to go do this, but there's a lot of things here that are very, 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 very valuable, and it causes for some very compelling moments because of that. So when the character dynamics meet with the plot like that, it causes for not only some of the most intense moments like in Falcon of the Millennium Empire, but then you also get some of the sweetest and softest moments like we did right before his unfortunate passing. So it's what a phenomenal character, and Kentaro Miura truly created one of the greatest, not just in regards to being a protagonist and a symbol of certain things, but also in regards to a representation of what good character dynamics are. Guts, I feel like if you were to take a thing of the top 15 best character dynamics in all of Berserk, he would have most of them, because that's just how strong of a character he is. Go ahead, AJ.
Yeah.
Oh, I just really like the take of him being in his lowest moment during the winter journey, because I definitely see it. Like you said, he has very little. Everything's laid bare, like it's naked. He has nothing to distract him, no coping, no running away, which prevents him from being as emotionally low as he is there, because he just feels it in its rawest form. His, I guess, in some ways, his ironic powerlessness, the loneliness, the futility, the pain. And, like, I guess it's further along in his personal journey. Like, it's further on his path to, I guess, healing. But he had to go lower before he could ascend. So I just really like that take.
It's got his probably most despicable moment in the series in that stretch, and it's something like that moment has always, like, that got visceral reaction out of me, and it's stuck with me ever since, because it's like, we obviously feel bad for him, right? It's Miura crafted this twisted scenario where you feel very bad for him in that moment, and he's that, for me, is why he's at his lowest, right? Because it's not just a loss of, like, things, it's a loss of the self as well. I feel like one thing that makes Guts's character arc so poignant is that through Golden Age we see him lose much, like, way before the eclipse. We see him he's losing things from birth, right? And he finally finds something. He finally makes peace with his, I guess you could call it, his existential quest, right? Where he leaves the band for a while, and he comes back, and he's finally found that self, and he's found what he wants, and that's when everything is taken from him, including that self. So that's what makes the winter journey hit so much for me, because he's trying to reconcile with the things he's lost. He's still got himself. He's convinced himself he's still got himself, but who he is also something that he's not proud of or happy with. So like, the one thing he has left is something he's struggling with. Guts is a difficult character to talk about, because there's so much there. But shout out Guts.
Shout out to Guts. Hey, Nathan, that was the Nathan hour right there. Shout out to my dog Nathan.
Shout out Nathan, bro. Yeah.
Go ahead, AJ, man. Number 4.
Okay, so my number 4 would probably be, and you talked about this character a little bit earlier, Beatrice from Umineko.
Nice.
I've been really thinking a lot lately about how much I enjoy pieces of work that are character studies and reflections of characters through their design, whether it be through thematics or the setting, or character dynamics, or the themes that are tackled through the supporting cast, or whatever. I've had a lot of that with Yakuza lately, Trails the Third lately, God of War, Ragnarok, Valhalla.
Nice.
So I've experienced a lot of that lately. But I think Umineko is it's right up there, maybe my favorite or the best example of a story that is wholly holistically reflective of a certain character and their traumas, their difficulties, their aspirations, and their hang-ups. Beatrice is baked into every element of Umineko's design. And while she may not be the primary protagonist, I do really think that the story is her story. And she's one of those really complex characters, similar to, like, Eren or Griffith, speaking of Berserk, or Walter White, I think, who is deceptively complex, who is incredibly complex, and I don't think it's possible to understand her. 100%.
Right.
I think it's possible to get a good grasp of who she is. The more you reflect and try to dissect her and maybe reread or read up on it and share things, but I don't think she's a character who can be fully understood. And that ties into the themes of the game beautifully, but it's also just so engaging and so emotional because as complex as she is even more emotional and heartfelt. And it was just a joy as I first experienced Umineko to try to piece together the story, but through doing so, piece together her and who she is and where her heart lies and what's going on here. Because it's kind of like, similar to Aerith being masterful at everything, learning about Beatrice and learning about Umineko is interacting and engaging with every element of stories. Cerebral, more intellectual, more theory-based interpretive stuff, but then emotions and heart and everything. And I think she is one of my favorite examples of why stories are so life-saving and worth experiencing. And she's one of my favorite characters ever. And Umineko, she's the single most important character in Umineko, in my opinion.
Agreed.
She's not my favorite. She would be my second favorite, but she's the most important. And so I really wanted to mention her because Umineko is one of my favorite stories, and along with all of that, it would not exist nearly as well as as beautifully as it does if she wasn't so perfectly crafted in every way, in every episode, in every line of dialogue. It's just amazing that she exists.
I'm so glad you brought up Beatrice. I've been thinking a lot about Umineko because Ace Attorney, playing through it, I realized how much Umineko got from Ace Attorney, and there's a lot of stuff there that every time I see it, I'm looking at it through the lens of a series that was inspired by that in Umineko. So every time we'll have like the classic Phoenix and Edgeworth battles or whatever prosecutor's on the stand, and we see what's happening, I always think back to the way that Ryu 07 executed similar types of things within his story, and it's just Beatrice, like I brought up earlier, is just such an enigma. I feel like Beatrice in another type of way to what I talked about Aerith earlier, being like the such a great thing no matter what they do. Going back to the Chimera Ant arc parallel, I genuinely also feel like Beatrice may be one of the most entertaining characters no matter what. Like,
for sure,
when she's cooking, like, that is a character that has your full like aura on blast. You know what I mean? Like, you are locked in. When this character speaks, you're listening type of vibe. Like, she's such a well executed character on multiple different facets. It's very, very difficult to craft a character that's as incredible as she is in almost every single regard. It's incredible. Shout out to Beatrice. Speaking of Beatrice, the next character I'm going to talk about is a character I've had on my list for a very long time, as one of my all-time favorite characters, representing that sort of what I like to call the next four that I have on my list, even though they're all part of different categories, a lot of it has to do with dreams. And so this one in particular is what it means to actually chase your dream at all costs. And so I think of a character like Beatrice, I think of Griffith, obviously, but I think my favorite representation of that is a character you just recently met in your journey on Twitch, AJ, and that is Naked Snake, aka Big Boss. This is a character, obviously, I don't want to delve into too much because I'm looking forward to seeing you continuing through the franchise, hopefully whenever they bring
Volume 2,
you know what I mean? But this, even just with that first initial entry, you can see as very similar thing as the Golden Age there, with a character who obviously... there was so many things that could have gone right for this character, like the Obito situation. There's so many things that could have gone right, for this character, and instead, because of one little mishap or one little thing, it does not end up happening that way. And I really appreciate when we get to see stories that show us that show us the characters that are just like your main protagonist, but something happened along the way that shifted that. And I feel like a Big Boss represents that beautifully, which it's why that game works so well, even as a standalone. In Snake Eater, because what you see, going back to the legendary character thing, is obviously when you first start off Metal Gear, you hear of the legend of this character. Every single person in this, like, you think Roger and Jing are like the characters that everybody hypes up. No character gets hyped up in their series the way the Big Boss gets hyped up. Like, they're like, yo, this guy, he was him. You gotta understand, like, he was him. Except when you look at it through Big Boss's perspective, especially in MGS1. Everybody refers to this character with like a sort of reverence, as well as a sort of like man, that guy was a demon, you know what I mean? Like, he was built different. He's definitely somebody who did anything means necessary to accomplish what they needed, which is obviously the thing that Snake wasn't willing to do in many different points. So obviously that is one of, if not my favorite dynamic ever in the Big Boss Solid Snake dynamic. But the just talking about Big Boss here, the character in and of itself represents exactly that, and that is one of my favorite things in stories, is whenever you get to see someone who could have been the quote unquote main protagonist of the entire thing, and you see this one little thing that shifted them off course. And now you're following a different type of journey for them, and it humanizes them, because you can see a lot of yourselves in them, especially with someone like Big Boss, who is very silly, especially in that game. He's extremely silly.
He's hilarious,
absolutely hilarious, and you get to see how love comes into the picture, and all these different things to make us human. While at the same time, the struggles and how it really was out of his control that things happened the way they happened. But he's still a fantastic character, because even though all these things are happening around him, he is taking that step forward to take things into his own hands. And most of the time that ends up being in a way that would be anything means necessary. And so that is my number 4, representing, obviously, Metal Gear means a lot to me, but Big Boss is a character that anytime I think of like that Anakin, Griffith, Obito archetype of characters like that, Big Boss is like the one where I'm like, man, Kojima really knew what he was doing here. And I don't know where he came up with the concept of that character. I'm going to assume through all those movies and books that he read, or maybe it really is just a big Star Wars reference, but he really cooked with Big Boss. And I think it's a representation of one thing the stories do really, really well, which is to allow you to see the alternative of what could have been. And so shout out to Big Boss. That's my number 4.
I don't know. I have no idea where the series goes from after 3. I have no clue at all. But I imagine he's explored a bit more to an extent. Right. And you have me even more excited. Please, Konami, just release it. Just give it to me.
I've been stressing, like, we need Volume 2. Bro, Metal Gear Solid 4 has been stuck on the PS3 since 2008. Like,
it's
what
crazy.
Are we doing? What are we doing, man? It's insane. Big Fiji. We are now hitting the top 3. Tres. Talk to me, man. What's number 3, bro?
This discussion has made me want to check out so many more things, because I haven't had much to say for your picks, unfortunately. But yeah, number 3. So this is a character you are unfamiliar with, Recon, but I know AJ is a big fan. So I'm not gonna dive too much into specifics, but for number 3 we have my man John Silver from Black Sails.
Oh yeah.
And for this core, I guess you could just call it, this is a very simple, just a deuteragonist. Usually there's like a sun and moon dynamic between the protagonist and the deuteragonist, where they kind of complete each other, and they have two halves of the same whole sort of thing. So your Sasuke's, your Griffiths, your Killua's sort of, or even Takamura from Ippo, those kinds of characters I have listed here. But with Silver, it's so hard to get into why I love this character without spoiling. But let me just say this. In a story about stories, this is the most fascinating story to me, because it's a story where there's 100 different stories when it comes to this character. There are so many different ways you can view him. You can talk about him as we know him, as the audience knows him, and see him evolve over the course of four seasons. You can talk about him as he's perceived within the world, as this myth of a man, like how other men talk about him. It just depends. There's so many ways to view this character, and so many different answers you'll get from looking at this character through these different lenses. And just such a necessary, that's so important for a story like Black Sails and what Black Sails is trying to say. And yeah, it's a character where I've seen so many varying interpretations of Silver, and all of them, not all of them, but most of them hold as much, like they're as valid as the next for me, because he's kind of like this blank canvas in a lot of ways. Well, not blank, but there's very little we know about this character, and at the same time you think you know so much about him because he's the deuteragonist. You spend so much time with him, you think you know, but do you? It's yeah, he's a very special character to me. I like him nearly as much as Flint, who is my favorite of the show. And I have to squeeze this in, his performance by Luke Arnold is masterful. One of the best TV performances I've seen.
Amazing.
I gotta watch this show, man.
You do. Recon. I'm so glad Fiji had him on the list. He's without doubt one of the most genius concepts for a character you'll ever see in anything. He's I go back and forth between him and Flint as my favorite. Like,
yeah, valid.
He's so great.
Yeah, those last, yeah. Yeah.
my boy's sticking back at me like, yeah, that was a good pick. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
that was a good pick.
Yeah. Silver, special character, very special character. Like, there's so much I want to talk about, but Recon, we'll have this discussion when you peep it again. I know Hot Boy Spicy finished it recently as well.
Oh,
so
nice.
We might have to get in a little freeway call when you make that happen, bro.
Nice, for sure. We can do that.
But yeah, that's my number 3.
AJ, man, the big three. Even though you already talked about them earlier, but the big.
So I guess the first, the rest of them are characters. Like I said, there's no order, but all 3 of these are. There's, I don't know. There's a bit of something special to each of them. Not that the others didn't have it, but like, there's a little something extra. So. Number 3 would be a character neither of you are familiar with, but who is in the conversation for the best character I've ever seen, which is Emmett Selk from Final Fantasy XIV. I don't want to say much at all about this character. If anyone's played 14, I need to say even less. I'll just, like, we talked about Aerith. I adore her beyond words. You heard my whole spiel about her. One of the most important characters ever. There are characters throughout the Final Fantasy series that I adore so much. Zidane or Vivi from FF9.
Yep, Zizou.
Cloud himself. Other characters in 14 who I won't name. But Kefka. I adore Kefka so much. But Emmett Selk is my favorite Final Fantasy character, and so by default, maybe my favorite video game character, and maybe my favorite character. He was number 1 on my lists. I don't want to say too much, but he, and I think he's particularly interesting, especially if you're a longtime fan of the series, because you can see lots of foundations laid by characters of his ilk in earlier entries that have been extrapolated and elaborated upon and polished and evolved and integrated. So you can see 3 or 4 essential iconic Final Fantasy characters in his design while also being obviously his own thing. And when it all comes together and you understand who he is and what his role is and everything, it was one of those awe-inspiring, jaw-dropping moments. I was streaming it, and I straight up just forgot what I was doing and was just completely immersed and so captivated. It was just captivated beyond words. He is more than perfection to me. Like, he is... I can't believe that he was able to be executed with that amount of skill and beauty in the presentation, and emotions, and the way that he props up and elevates the rest of the story. I'll leave it there. But I know, Recon, you've started your 14 journey.
Yes.
And it's a long one. Whenever you get to this character, I can't wait for you to see him and to see your relationship with him, because I think he's super up your alley. And Fiji, if you ever get into 14, I know it's a hell of an undertaking, but if you ever do, he's for you. He's for everyone, basically.
He's for everyone. I have to ask. The way that you spell the name, is it like Emmett from One Piece?
One
like
Piece?
Emeth?
There's
Like
no
that?
H, so it's
there's no H,
Emmett.
okay.
Yeah, EMET-Selch, which is SELCH.
Gotcha. Okay. Oh man, every time we talk, I'm like, man, I really got to play FF14. I really got to do it. And it's like every time that I'm like, because like even the other day I was looking at it and I was like, man, I really want to play it. And then my brother was like, all right, it's Ace Attorney time. I was like, oh, you're right. My bad. You're right. So yeah, one of these days for sure. You have no idea how excited about it. Every time we talk about it, every time we discuss it, it gets me more stoked for what's to come. So definitely we'll be talking about that. But staying on Final Fantasy, listen, man. Now, this is going to be a character that I'm sure, if we do this when the third part comes out, might end up being either 2 or number 1 on my all-time list, just because of the insane amount of build-up that we're getting here in part 3. Even with us talking about Aerith earlier, and that's obviously a character I love so much, but I can't deny my heart. Coming in number 3, representing the theme of identity, is undoubtedly Cloud Strife. I'm not going to get too much into it for anybody who has not played the game, and I know my boy Fiji's going through the journey. But Cloud really is when I think about what the ideal role-playing game protagonist is, it's Cloud Strife. I don't know what kind of thing Sakaguchi and the team were on while creating this character, but they really struggled. They created a character that resonates obviously with so many of us for a multitude of different reasons. But even on the base design level, you created a character that so many of us want to be, and yet all the series ever tells us is to be ourselves. And what better representation of that than Cloud Strife as a protagonist? He's so cool. He's so dorky. He's a representation of rawness, but at the same time is the most awkward character ever. He has the best dynamics with everyone. At the same time, has the craziest potential with other characters. In the original game, you're the one that makes the decisions on what you say and what you do, and it ends up being one of the most integral parts of the entire narrative as you progress through that story. And in the remake and rebirth trilogy, you see how that character comes into his own without taking away any of those original RPG elements. When I think of main protagonists that represent main protagonists, like if you were to put like a room of MCs together, the other day I was listening to a discussion on the most iconic PlayStation protagonists, and immediately what was brought up was Cloud, even though Final Fantasy VII, normally when we think of PlayStation, you think of like Crash Bandicoot or whatever. It was a pretty good consensus that Cloud represents that console, and it's not just because the PlayStation 1 represents, or Final Fantasy VII represents the PS1 as the second most sold game, and the reason why a lot of people bought the console. But also because Cloud represents like what a main character is and what a main character should be, to the point to where even in a movie, in Advent Children, you get to see this character outside of a video game, and it still works because at its core, what Cloud Strife is and what they're trying to say with that character will resonate with you no matter who you are, if it's a story for you, right? Because obviously, similar to something like an Evangelion, for example, if that story doesn't connect with you, it's not going to connect with you. But for those in which that the story does connect with you, Cloud Strife is undoubtedly an MC for MCs. And I'm so grateful and blessed that I got to meet this character, because throughout so many points in my life, I have had that thought of like, man, like Cloud, man, that's my guy. that's my boy. Always has been, always will be. And he has that cool little dichotomy between me loving him for his rawness and his coolness and his and how awesome certain scenes are with him, and then the other thing where it's like, man, this guy's just as awkward and weird and dorky as I can be at any different point. It's just such a fantastic character that, as wild and crazy as his design makes it feel like he is the most grounded or one of the most grounded characters I've ever seen. Just a phenomenal character that represents so many different things, but I think at its core, its identity and the type of story that you want to tell as a person, as well as the type of story you want to tell through your main protagonist. And so that's why Cloud Strife is my number 3.
Oh, man. Can you...
I can...
Sorry, go ahead, PG.
No, I was going to say I can attest to the iconic stature of Cloud. Like, I've known the name and that design for as long as I can remember. Like, from very young years, I've known that character, that big sword, the blonde hair, and the name Cloud. Yeah. But yeah, sorry, AJ, go ahead.
I was just going to say, firstly, beautifully said. And secondly, can you believe that as amazing as he is, he's going to be significantly better after part 3?
Yeah.
Like, can you believe that?
Dude, like I said at the beginning of the spiel, I would not be surprised if when part 3 comes out, because he's already, if I were to make like an actual like favorites of all time, he's probably right here in the spot too, like somewhere in the top 5. But it's like, at the end of part 3, there is a good argument he could be at number 1, man. I mean, just knowing
for sure
the original story and how much harder it's going to hit in part 3, it's like, man, cook Square. I need you to cook.
We'll be, as long as it takes, we'll be waiting.
That's right. But I before we move on to number 2, I do love what Fiji said in regards to the knowing like the iconic design, because I think that is so integral. That is one of the reasons, 2 of the reasons why I got into stories that I really love at a young age. The reason I checked out Bleach was because I saw Ichigo with a big sword, and I was like, dude, that somebody like Cloud is in an anime. And I've told this story many times, but whenever I first got into Bleach, especially the Soul Society stuff, all of that reminded me so much of the Midgar portion of Final Fantasy VII, where I was like, dude, this is my jam. Like, I love this. And there was before I pass it over, there was a comment on an FF7 Advent Children AMV, a really old one. It's one of like the ones that were made like in 2005, 2006, whatever it is. But the comment represents it super well. It says, if you're watching this, then you're probably into, and then it shows like a couple things, and it shows Final Fantasy VII, Bleach, and then Evanescence, and it was like and Linkin Park, and I was like, oh my god, like they hit it on the head. Like that was the aesthetic of the mid 2000s was that thing. But I just thought that was a cool little thing. Every time I think of Cloud and or Ichigo or Guts, because that was another reason why I got into Berserk. I was like, oh my god, another Cloud character, guy with a big sword. But it's just his design is that iconic. But yeah, Fiji man, number 2, bro.
Number 2. So for these next 2 characters, these are my top 2 favorite characters in fiction. So it worked out nicely.
Mine
for that.
too, actually.
And they do kind of intersect in some ways, which I'll talk about when I get to number 1. But number 2, we have Tony Soprano.
Let's go!
Ooh,
my guy!
And yeah, Tony Soprano. So I think the main hook for me is the fact that you're following an unquestionably terrible person, but you kind of, for me at least, I know a lot of people, I have friends who've watched and don't feel this way, but for me at least, I find myself empathizing with him a lot of the time. And it's such a complicated feeling. And I think it's a testament to the quality of this character that over like nearly 2 decades since the show has ended, we still have people discussing whether or not he is genuinely evil, or whether it was just the role he's been thrust into. And it's such a fascinating character. I think the complexity of his character is the fact that there's no like line to be drawn. He needs to be evil and play his role in life and the cards he's been dealt, but he's also there's times where he revels in that and you're thinking, okay, he is like, for me, the one scene that I want to bring up is not Made in America. It's Kennedy and Heidi towards the end of the episode, where he's on the floor. For me, that's the moment where he's past the point of no return. But before that point, I did think, there's still hope for this guy.
Right.
He's a character who is constantly showing remorse for the bad things he's doing. He's a character who still has a lot of his priorities in check, in terms of, even though he is a terrible father when you take it all together, this is a character we're following and seeing things from his lens. And from his point of view, he genuinely believes he's doing the right thing. He has this kind of moral code to him. Even if it's fundamentally a bit fucked up, there is elements of himself that does care about doing the right thing. And it's such a compelling arc to follow, to see this man trying to change, but then you're asking yourself at the end of it all, was he actually trying, or was he trying to get better at masking who, like, yeah, this is I've rewatched the show twice, and on my second watch through, I actually came to a completely different conclusion to my first. After the first watch through, I told myself, yeah, he's just a completely evil, terrible person. And that was the whole point of it. And that's why the show ended the way it was and just cut to black like that. But with the second watch through, I started noticing these little subtleties, like how he projects his own wishes for his own childhood years onto AJ. Who's another one of my favorite characters from The Sopranos. Like stuff like pushing him into football. Like I think it's the test stream episode where we see him walking through his high school and looking at the cupboard of all the trophies, all the football trophies and whatnot, and how there's a bunch of little subtleties like that scattered throughout the show, where there's this inner voice and there's this part of him who just yearns for another life, to be dealt different cards in life. And that is no justification, and that's the tough part of it all, when you think to yourself, but none of this really justifies it. He's in a position where if he wanted to, it would be difficult, but he could pack his bags and leave and try and make that happen. But he's convinced himself he can't, and that he's locked into this for life. And it depresses him, and it makes him kind of unconsciously like disassociate from the things he has to do. And you see him just gradually over the course of the story lose the empathy he has in the earlier parts of the story, as he just becomes more and more jaded and more just constantly treading towards that path of no return, which he ultimately reaches, I would say, at least in Kennedy and Heidi. But overall, man, just Tony Soprano, best performance. Like I would extend this to every medium personally. Like best presented character in anything for me. And that's tough because we have the first character, but no, I'd say he's better presented character than my favorite character of all time. He's the best presented character in anything for me. Not even just from the acting performance, but even just how the story is told. Like people always talk about how revolutionary it was to have a mob boss going to therapy, right? You basically have canon character analysis going on. Like what
Exactly.
we do in videos is happening in the episodes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You got Melfi literally analyzing his character,
Mm-hmm.
and that was a very strong hook for me personally. And just the way he's presented is perfect. I can't wait. There was a documentary announced a couple of days ago, a David Chase documentary. Yeah, I am so psyched for that. I'm very excited. The main thing I'm excited for is to hear the cast members talk about how it was being on the set with James Gandolfini, because I'm very excited for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, Tony Soprano. I feel like I've barely scratched the surface with the things I love about this character, but specifically that following a terrible person who the story makes you empathize with is what I wanted to highlight, because that is a core in a few other characters like Walter White, Eren Yeager for me towards the latter half of the story, and even what we mentioned earlier with Guts in the Winter Journey. Not necessarily terrible person, but you know what I mean. It's a similar kind of deal there, where you're empathizing with a character doing things that would typically, disgust you.
I love that pick so much, bro. Tony Soprano is I don't even know where to begin with such a marvelous. So many things. Just beautifully said, brother. Beautifully said. To add on to your presentation point, I most certainly do agree that he may very well be the most well-presented character ever on multiple different fronts, and I think one of the fronts that it's at its strongest is through the visual front. There are so many. There's a lot of different ways in which the angles of the camera represent how Tony
framing and whatnot.
All the framing represents either his state of mind or how we're supposed to be feeling viewing this through his lens. It's a really, really well put together series. Obviously, a fantastic show. But I think just in regards of framing the scene specifically through his mind, it's some of the most brilliant stuff you'll ever see. And so even in regards to the actual visual shot by shot a basis of a television show, it may very well be the apex of that as well. Just you had me thinking about visual presentation, and yeah, Tony's got that as well. Like I was comparing him, I was like, yeah, him, you're number one. Which one has cleaner visual presentation? I mean, Inoue goes pretty hard on things, but I was like, nah, man, hold on. My boy Tony has some incredible visual presentation in the show.
Yeah, and even beyond that as well, you know how much I love Funhouse.
Yes.
All of those trippy, surrealist dream sequences.
Right.
Oh my god, Kevin Finity.
Yes, sir.
Those episodes there, in the start of season 6. I think that's when I realized, this is a generational all-timer character for me. I was already in love from Funhouse. I think Funhouse cemented it as one of my favorite series, but that was where I was like, this is like top 5 best character ever. So,
shout out to
start of season 6.
It was John Patterson, right, that directed Funhouse, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so. Let me double check real quick.
Amazing visionary for doing that.
Yes.
Yeah.
John Patterson. Yes. Incredible episode.
With regards to the presentation of his character, I think the visuals are amazing, and you talked about it already, but specifically the culmination of, I guess, the dialogue, like the writing and the little like micro expressions and little inflections on the tone of the acting, like the little details in the acting combined with the dialogue, because there are, like, I distinctly remember seeing scenes where, like, he's bigoted multiple times throughout the series, but I distinctly remember seeing a scene where he was saying some really horrible stuff, but like I think he was with Melfi, but his process to getting there, and like in the process of saying those things, you can see that like he's almost there to understanding. He's almost on the path to which he could become more open-minded, but then it just gets shut off by
there's that inner conscience pushing back. Yeah.
And it's captured really well in like the tiny details of presentation.
Yeah. Like even the panic attacks, I say, would support that. Like it's his. There's he's at a conflict between the life he has to live, the mask he has to wear in a sense, and his soul, and what he deep down, like his internal moral guide, I guess you could say, like what he considers right and wrong. He's constantly doing things that he's been conditioned to think are good and correct, and in a lot of ways he is a terrible person who purports that and pushes that. That's undeniable, of course, but you know, I personally, at least, the fact that it's fiction helps, but I just couldn't help but empathize with him in so many moments of the series where I'm like, I want him to be better and to do well. And I think that's what I think David Chase commented on that as well, with his response to fans theorizing over the ending. And he's like, one of the biggest surprises for me was that I wrote this story and people followed him for 6 seasons and everybody just wants him to die. which I understand why a lot of people might feel that way, but I was definitely one of the ones where the writing came through and it had me wanting to see a happier end for him. But yeah, that's my number 2.
I love it, man. Fantastic pick. I was waiting for it. I was like, which character? I was thinking it was gonna be Tony, but I was like, just in case it wasn't, I had a few in my mind. I was like, which Sopranos character is he gonna bring up? But I'm glad he went with Tony.
I was considering AJ.
Okay.
AJ, I'm a big fan of AJ.
Oh, me too. Yeah, the one in the calls.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of AJ. Both AJs.
Yep. Oh man, AJ, bro, numero dos.
Okay, so I stick out in that my top 2 are not my favorite 2 characters, but they are 2 of my favorites, and neither of these top 2 are my favorite in their respective series, but they're very close to it, and they're the ones that I think I go to bat for the most, or they're the ones that I find myself talking about a lot.
Can I guess one?
Sure.
Am I gonna hit Poof?
That's one of them. Yeah.
Let's go! Poof analysis on my channel. Let's go.
I heard go to bat for them, and I thought, yeah, it's gotta be Poof.
Yeah. Okay, so one of them's Poof. That was gonna be the one that was gonna be the last one I talk about. I'll still talk about him last.
Okay, my bad.
No. I don't mind at all. So I guess you'll know my. Screw it. I'll talk about Poof. It's Poof. It's Poof from Hunter x Hunter. No, like, he is. I was talking about formative characters throughout my life. The minute I saw him, I just knew he was different. He immediately struck me. I found myself hanging on to his every word, his every action. And the more and more you dig into his mind and the Chimera Ant arc, the more and more fascinated and horrified I was, because in my opinion, he is the character, at least most notable character, arguably with the worst fate in the series. And I think that if you compare him to all the major players of Chimera Ant and Hunter x Hunter in general, I straight up would not say that any other character is written better than him. It was for this I was choosing between Poof and Crollo, but I went with Poof. His psychology is just unlike anything I've ever seen. It's like it's an internal paradox. His programming and his nature, as is sort of dictated to him internally, is his Achilles' heel, in that he follows his role, he follows what he's supposed to do and what he thinks is his purpose and his identity and his reason for being on for existing. But due to the nature of who Meruem is and his own arc and his own journey, it was it was just a spiraling, slippery slope, and he was never the closest he would ever have been to succeeding in his literal identity and purpose was at his birth, because every moment after that, Meruem went further and further towards humanity, and he lost his grip. And the way he conflates his identity with his with his duty, that of having Meruem become the magnificent Ant King and ruler, it's just, I think, it's a very sad story, because he was literally born into this duty that he was destined to fail, really. But what really nails it for me is his presentation, through visuals in the manga and anime, and the voice acting. One of the best performances in the anime. And the little details along the way, like him spiraling for the king, his little glances towards Komugi, him sort of slipping, the scene in episode 108, I'm not sure which chapter it is, but where Meruem asks the royal guards, what should my name be? Or his question about what it is, what his identity is, what his name is. And Poof just says, you are king. Each royal guard gives an answer that is indicative of their own role and personality and their human trait. And Poof's maddeningly human trait is this idealism, in that he serves the king in his mind, that isn't the king in reality, that he needs the king to be to feel like his life is worth anything. This idealism of something that is very distinct from reality. And as sort of mechanical and programming flaw-esque that seems, that is incredibly human. That is as human as Yuppie's sort of knight's chivalric honor that he gets, then Pito's compassion, that Meruem's growing respect for different forms of life and different ways of being fulfilled. And I just think his incredible flamboyance, his incredibly deep and efficient and rich internal psychology and how it's explored, just everything about him. If he is the first character I think of when I think of AJ Core. And I think because of the way I gush about him, many people think that as well. I think that's why Fiji guessed.
Yeah.
Like I think he's just a masterful character in and of himself, but he's also feels like one that is tailor-made for me to explore. Right. It's one of those characters that feels like it was made for me, even though he obviously wasn't, and many others probably feel similarly to me. But in the moment while exploring him, it just feels that way because of how much it connects to me. And more importantly, I think Poof, to almost a greater extent than any other character in any story I've seen, is a character that only Togashi could write in the specific way he's written. So he's a celebration of Togashi and his quirks and eccentricities as well.
Okay, yeah.
So yeah,
see that.
Poof is absolutely probably the foremost example of an AJ Core character, and I adore him, and I'll never stop adoring him.
I can tell you off of just like you said, the representation of that, Poof was definitely that. Like whenever I think of, man, AJ really like put me on just how masterful of a character this is. There's a lot of characters you've done that for, but Poof was the first one where I just remember being like wow, Poof really is an incredible character. Like of course going through Hunter x Hunter, I loved these characters, but whenever I first saw you talk about Poof, I was like, my God, he's right. Like he's cooking. Yeah, Poof really is absolutely incredible, and it's that Homelander. It's perfect down to the last minute detail for Poof, but he really is like everything down to the last minute detail for that character is done to perfection. It's absolutely insane. But yeah, great pick. But that was both a very Fiji core pick for his number 2 and a very AJ core pick for his number 2. So I think it is a very fitting thing that my number 2 could not be any more Recon core. because it is a three-way tie, and I thought AJ was going to steal mine from earlier. But it is exactly what AJ said, except it is not the same three characters. So we're going to be talking about the big three, obviously here. My number two, with a main emphasis on what stories are capable of, as well as the concept and idea of freedom, as it is explored through these three characters. And that is, of course, the main protagonists of each individual series in Mugiwara no Luffy, Naruto Uzumaki, and Ichigo Kurosaki. These three characters mean... I don't even know where to begin on how much they mean to me, just in regards to my upbringing, in regards to how many times I would be in class thinking about what they would do in a certain situation. They're very formative for me, obviously, but I think as I've gotten older, I've come to appreciate them in regards to the way that they are as characters. I have a deeper connection to these characters because, similar to Usagi from earlier, these are characters that I've been with for so long that I'm able to see how I viewed them when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, and now as an adult, the differences in that, and how I view them as creations, as an author, and how I view them as an individual who consumes these stories as well. And I think something that all three characters emphasize and have as deep integral parts of their of each of their stories is that all three of them take action when action is required. And that is a very difficult decision to make within our lives. Like, there's many decisions that we have to make that, based on that decision, things could go haywire wrong, but it could also be a window of opportunity that could take you to excellence and exactly what you're looking for. And I think anytime I think of something like that, or I am in a place, or I'm placed in a situation like that, to make a decision that I know could be in the type of way, those are the first three characters that come to mind for me, because all three of them are men of action. All three of them are individuals that when it calls for, no matter what it is that they're going through, and they go through a lot in their own individual ways, but all three of them take action when needs be, and that in and of itself obviously makes them characters that stick out in my mind for that reason. But whenever you throw on the freedom element, and you see how, because of these characters existing, everything around them starts to change. The individuals within their respective worlds and within their respective surroundings begins to change thanks to these insane, whether it's a beaming thing of sunlight in Luffy, or the shining ray of a hero in Naruto, or our beloved Ichigo Kurosaki. It's like, when you look at these three characters and you see their dynamics with the rest of the cast, it's very difficult for, like, I could see an argument in a lot of other stories that, man, this person should have been the main character, man, this person should have been the main character, but in regards to the big three, I could never and would never exchange these three characters for any other character, to have them in this spot for the stories that they were chosen to be in. And I think it's really, really important with that context in mind, because obviously, especially with recent developments in One Piece, there's the whole Chosen One and Will versus Destiny thing that is explored in all three of these series. But the thing that strikes me in my mind is, no matter what would have happened with any of these characters, whether they are Chosen One characters or they're not Chosen One characters, the fact remains that they took decisions and actions that, had they not made those actions, their destinies would never have been fulfilled anyway. So it's a beautiful, all three of them represent many different things, beautiful dynamics, incredible moments that I always look back to as powerful moments that inspired me as a person. Inspiration could probably be another thing that would propel me forward. Ichigo in particular helped me through a lot of hard times. Luffy and Naruto continue to this day be those pillars of, like, man, what would I do in this situation? And I always think back to those characters. But I think at its core, when I think about the dreams that I'm trying to achieve, and I look back to these characters, and it's not just for me, but for an entire generation of people like myself. It's thanks to these three that we can have those thoughts of like, the generation before me did not have Naruto, Ichigo, and Luffy, but because our generation does, we are able to have a different kind of mindset towards dreams, towards other perspectives and ideologies, similar to how Naruto would execute a situation like that. Like they've just opened my mind to so many different things that I can't imagine my life without these three characters. All three of them are raw. All three of them are Goat Raw Fire Peak. But I think at their core, outside of everything that is external, they've helped me grow so much as a human being that I can't imagine a list of mine not having all three of them. And I honestly do believe when I'm almost out of here and death is incoming and I'm 80 something years old, hopefully, or 90 or whatever the case may be, I'll be looking back on these three characters the same way that people before me looked at people like Muhammad Ali and Babe Ruth and these men who encapsulated the American dream. I think for me, when I think of people that I want to be like and I strive to be like, it's these three wonderful characters. And so shout out to Masashi Kishimoto, shout out to Ichiro Oda, and shout out to Tite Kubo, because if it weren't for those three happening around the same time and me getting into all three of these at the same time, I would not love stories as much as I do. And most importantly, I don't think I would be here without those three. And so because of that, they're not only my number two, but I could most certainly see an argument that whenever One Piece ends and I reflect on all three of these series, they might get number one just off of tax. Off of like, oh my god, it's them tax. So that's why those three characters are my number two.
That was beautiful, bro.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. I resonate with a lot of that. I didn't have so much, like, I was younger when these were coming out, when I was following them, the big three at the same time. So I don't have as deep of a connection. But the nostalgia associated to these three series, like I was too young to engage with media in a way where I'm like understanding these characters beyond, the entertainment factor. But the entertainment factor is enough for them to mean that much. So yeah, that was beautiful, man.
I appreciate
it. Totally ditto. I love everything you said about them, and I'm, whereas Fiji said they're not, it wasn't quite as nostalgic for him as it was for you. I'm on the complete other end where I'm experiencing them now, and I constantly say, I can't believe how amazing it is to have, for some of you guys and you in particular, to have grown up with this. Like, that is, to have these stories and specifically these characters to look up to during these formative moments of your life. It's no wonder that importance and how they're life defining and life saving. It's so clear, and I think there's a lot to it's more than just stories when it comes to that. I don't know. I wouldn't change anything about the way I experience the stories, but every now and again I get a little bit of a pang of jealousy that you guys were able to experience this when you were younger, because of that. Like, it's embedding these lessons through your formative years. It's you've just described it beautifully. I can't get my mind around that. I'm getting my mind around these characters now as an adult, and embedding the things they teach me into my journey. So yeah, it's just I don't know. I'm just rambling, but I'm so glad they mean that for you, and that was really beautifully said.
I can tell you that I really appreciate I really appreciate whenever you were going through the journey, whenever both you were going through your journey, and whenever Fiji did his rereads, in particular, of Naruto and Bleach, because it just goes to show that at this point in time, even at the stage and age where we are, these stories can still resonate with us, whether you're experiencing it for the first time or whether you're doing a reread because you haven't experienced it in a while. It just goes to show that with time and age, your perspective on these series can either change in whatever way that it goes, and or even if you experience this series at an older age than other individuals who did experience it, that it can still resonate and hit you as hard as it did someone like me. And I think that is the biggest stamp of, like, yeah, these series really do have that magic stuff to them. It's not just nostalgia talking whenever we talk about these three. Like, they are genuinely well put together series that came out of happenstance, that because of how competitive Shonen Jump is as a magazine, everyone had to deliver at the highest possible level to compete. And because of that, we got the very best out of three of the greatest creators we've ever had in the medium of anime and manga. So it's like, to see that through either individuals who grew up with it, or someone who's just now experiencing it, or someone who's going back and rereading it, it's a really beautiful thing. And it goes to show that these three series, the reason why they resonate with people is not just because of certain elements. There's a lot of things at play here, and I'm so appreciative of the fact that both of you guys shared your respective journeys with these series as well.
Yes, thank you, AJ, for going through all three of these on stream. It's been a blast.
Well,
I'm sure not just for me and for a lot of people watching, it's like reliving parts of your childhood in a sense. It's been a great experience.
It's my pleasure. That's why it's that part of it is being able to share it in this way is why I wouldn't change anything about my journey with it, and being able to share with you guys who have experienced it earlier in your life. But also, thank you both of you, because like through these talks, the talks throughout One Piece, the talks about Naruto and Bleach, Recon's constantly been sort of this. I don't mean this. I don't know how else to word this right now. Excuse the tiredness. But been pushing me to keep going. You know.
Yep.
Like I don't know.
This voice of contagious optimism.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. It's infectious. The passion for it, which has always spurred me to keep going and keep wanting to explore these stories in the first place. And then once I start them, I love them all. So it just spirals from there. And then Fiji is my Bleach mod who sends me every week, stuff about the upcoming reads and the spreads that I can't really capture in the moment because I'm freaking out, and Viz's quality is sometimes not the best, and taking care of spoilers and building up stuff in the Discord. And so thank you to both of you in very different ways, because I wouldn't be able to do it at all without wouldn't have been able to do it at all without you guys.
Now, Fiji really is the GOAT, bro. Like while watching the VODs, whether it be live or watching the VODs, the fact that my boy brings, like, always comes in clutch at the right moment, whether it be with a color page or
the poems.
with the poems or a description as to what, like. I
shout out to the rest of the mods.
Yeah, shout out to all the mods,
the whole team,
because the whole team really does, like, they provided such an incredible journey for you that, like you said earlier in regards to there could have been no other way to go about this, and there really could have been no other way you could have experienced Bleach. It's been such a magical experience, even for me as a person who's like seeing you go through it the first time. It's shout out to your mods, man, fantastic people.
I am very lucky, yeah.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I think it's my number one time.
Yes, sir. Now it's time for Now You Feel Like Number One.
Apologies if this is about to be a very long ramble.
No worries.
I don't often talk about this character deeply, so I'm gonna make use of this. But at number one, I have my favorite character of all time, Miyamoto Musashi, the protagonist of Vagabond.
Yes, sir.
And I guess you could say this core is what my top 10 list would have looked like if we just did favorite characters. So main characters, specifically, like, the main character is the story. Like, your Tonys, your Ichigo to an extent, your Erens to an extent, Ippo is a better example of this. Those kinds of characters where the main character is the story. And with Vagabond, that's just taken to an extreme like no other. Like, this is a character study through the lens of the character being studied. Like, we're watching this character sort of dissect himself and overcome these trauma blocks as he, recollects memories of his childhood and who he was before going through these traumatizing events. And it's fragmented, and we get it in pieces over the course of the story. And it's just everything about this character is a marvel. His presentation, the way his arc is constructed. I want to specifically focus on that for a second. The way his arc is constructed is one of the most resonant, powerful things I've ever experienced, because Musashi's arc is one where I fully understand people getting bored or getting lost in what is going on, because it's very much this repeated cycle of the same mistakes, the messages and lessons not getting through to his head. He's constantly meeting these wise old men who have lived his life and gone down that path, and they're telling him there's nothing at the end of that path, but he still keeps trudging along. He doesn't take in that information. In the 21st chapter of the manga, he's literally told point blank by Takuan, this life is not for you. The violence and killing, it's going to destroy you. And the very next chapter, there's a 4-year time skip, and he goes and makes the decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life by challenging the Yoshioka. And for me, what makes that so powerful is that it took him going down that path himself, making those mistakes, for it to really sink in and for it to really matter. We can all read a story, read a book, or be told things, and we can learn valuable things, 100%. There's a lot to be found in advice from other people, but there's no better teacher than experiencing something yourself, right, and going through it. That's when it really sinks in, and that resonates a lot as someone who, like, I'm the youngest in my family. I've got 4 older brothers, so things like being told what to do, what not to do, that's something that I can heavily resonate with. But you don't have to go down that road and make those mistakes. You can learn, but oftentimes you will go down that path and make those mistakes. And Musashi is a perfect depiction of that. And it's just, there's so much about him that I could talk about. I also want to call some attention to Inoue and how the character of Musashi is kind of like a projection of Inoue himself, and how he is striving for exactly what Musashi is striving for. Like, towards the last third of the manga, where it really starts to dwell in the abstract, and Musashi's just swinging his sword, striving for this state of oneness with the world, this state of complete equanimity and calmness and cool, to be completely lost in the art of swinging his sword, right? The way of the sword, as it's explored in Vagabond, is kind of like a vehicle for life itself, for going through the motions of anything, wherever it might be, of art, of something like, I don't know, fishing. There's one interview with Inoue where he specifically compares. So one thing he says about Real is him working within the fence of what a manga should be, and Vagabond is him working outside of that frame, right? And he talks about how, let me open it up and get the exact words. I don't want to miss. 1 second. Yeah. So he says the process with Real is almost like cooking. He takes the materials in front of him and puts them together. It's more of a matter of assembly. Whereas Vagabond is something more personal with no formula. It feels like he's making something that's not quite manga. It's almost something like running around a mountain or swimming in a river, in that there are no rules, but I have to use everything I have in me in every situation, which is what's so exhausting about drawing. And that really resonates, because one thing with Musashi, you can kind of think like, what are you doing here in some moments of I don't know, those last 80 or so chapters where he's come to this epiphany, and he's, reached the pinnacle. He's reached what he was always yearning for and just feels empty. And yet he's still going back out there and treading down that same path and kind of lying to himself, drawing the circle around himself to prevent people from attacking him, but he's still goading them on in that sense by doing that. So there's still so much for him to learn, and it's hard to understand what he's doing in a lot of these moments, but that's kind of what speaks to me, because I find myself in similar situations where I'm doing things that I don't fully understand why I'm doing them, but you feel like you need to. So there's a lot to Musashi. I feel like I've rambled a lot there, but there's so much about this character I could talk about.
That was beautiful, bro. That was beautiful, and I know how difficult it is to talk about your all-time favorite, because it's so difficult to put into words. But you did an excellent job at expressing that, and even it enlightened and opened my eyes, especially to the creative process. And now you know, you spoke of them. That was really enlightening.
That idea of Vagabond, I don't want to misconstrue it, but he said something along the lines of like, because of how deeply intimate and personal and it being more of a internal stream of consciousness, it's extremely difficult for him, right? It was something along those lines, right?
Yeah. So it was along those lines. So to give some like quick brief backstory on Vagabond, after he finished Slam Dunk and it was literally competing with Dragon Ball in terms of popularity, he was considering retirement. Like he reached the pinnacle basically, and he became obsessed with Eiji Yoshikawa's novel Musashi, which Vagabond is a loose adaptation of. After about 30 chapters, he kind of goes in his own direction. Like one thing is like Kojiro in the novel isn't death, and that's like a massive thing. So he goes in his own direction. But yeah, with Vagabond, right, even something like him using a brush, he speaks about him liking to use the brush because that way his lines are messier and they just come out the way they do. Like he's not very particular and meticulous. He instead likes to reach for that kind of flow state where he's in the moment of creating his art and pouring his essence into it and just getting lost in the act of drawing, which is why he opts for the brush. And I think that's very similar to how Musashi is with like swinging the stick around and trying to get into his own little flow state.
Right.
So yeah.
That's beautiful. And
so beautiful.
because of how I guess how much of a reflection of his soul it is, that's why it must be really difficult to get in a state where you want to do that, because it feels so monumental and important to you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's really beautiful.
AJ.
But yeah, Miyamoto Musashi. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good, dude. Look, listen, man. That was beautiful. I know. Like I said, in regards to how difficult it must be, which is why we talked about, the difficulties about making videos on stuff like that, because it almost feels impossible. You know what I mean?
I got one out recently, and it took a lot out of me, but I'm definitely gonna try to do more of them. It's one of those things where I think trying to put Vagabond into words kind of can go against the point of the story sometimes. I think it's something that needs to be felt and experienced, and it will. I love talking to people about their takeaways from it sometimes, because they're always so different. So that's why I don't like to engage with it too technically. I like to engage with it more from like an emotional perspective and what it means to you, because it is kind of this it is what you take from it, right? So yeah.
AJ, bro, the number one instrumental version. Talk to
me. So yeah, this is the one I was gonna do for 2, and then we switch it around. But either way, everything I said about Poof, ditto for this character. Just I guess a little bit later in my life, a couple years, 1 or 2 more years later. My number one for today is Tanji Washijo from Haikyuu, who is nice. If I were to do a Haikyuu ranking or something, he would probably these days he would probably be 3rd or 4th. So he's not my favorite in the series, but I think he's one of the, in terms of a sort of ratio of how discussed and how loved the character is to how important they are and how well presented and well written they are, he just doesn't get as nearly as much love as I think he should. Because, you know, you have Hinata, who's obviously the star of the show, but to me, his journey is just as admirable as Hinata's. I think he goes through one of the most defined, monumental arcs in the series, arguably the most monumental one, because essentially what happens with him is he is kind of, we were talking about the concept of AU characters, bad ends versus good ends. What he went through earlier in life is essentially, he went through what Hinata went through, being told he couldn't make it because he wasn't tall enough or strong enough or whatever. It's in his genetics. He's just unlucky, and he gave up, and then he just pursued coaching after that. But the thing with that is, well, firstly, there's an element of luck there, because I think a big part, I don't think Hinata would ever have given up, but I think a big part that encouraged him was having someone like Kageyama, and Washijo never had that. But in the same sort of vein as I was talking about before, he gave up, and that was his dream. That was what he lived and breathed, but he gave up because he believed what he was told, which is that it's just impossible for him. And so he took up coaching, and he formed this Shiratorizawa team, who are an indirect characterization of him, a reaction formation, an opposition of who he is. He felt small and weak. The identity of this Shiratorizawa team is tall, strong, dynamic, athletic, because that is what he was told volleyball was, and that was the reason he couldn't achieve his dreams. So he vicariously lives through Shiratorizawa, through Ushijima,
right,
through the whole team that complements Ushijima's flight, because he wasn't able to, so this is the closest thing he can do. But then he meets Hinata, who seems to prove to him, seems like to aggravatingly prove to him slowly and slowly that maybe he could have succeeded. And it's really ironically effective, because his worst nightmare is the idea that I could have achieved my dream, but he gave up. And so what he's dealing with through the match against Shiratorizawa, where he's seeing Hinata, is internally, my entire life could have been better. I could have lived a better life. I could have lived my dream, but I gave up too early. That is what he's dealing with. And that's why he has to defeat Hinata, because that is validating his life's path. But Hinata is just so persistent that ultimately he is inevitable, and he beats him. And he doesn't, like, outwardly he doesn't accept it. He doesn't accept it because accepting that Hinata beat him and that Hinata's way is a viable way to play volleyball would be accepting that he gave up too early, and his entire decades after that, he can't. It's hard to put into words the amount of regret he would feel if he were to accept that. But then he slowly, I don't want to paraphrase the whole story, but he slowly comes to terms with, you know what, maybe I don't have to view this as regret. Maybe I can view this as my victory too. Maybe I can, maybe I did give up, but it was worthwhile, and Hinata is a personification of my dreams as well. And so he slowly sees Hinata's victories as his. He feels his triumphs when Hinata succeeds. And that in itself, being able to slowly not only come to terms with the fact that you could have lived your dream and didn't, but to see that as encouragement and empowerment when his race is run and he's in the twilight of his life, that is one of the most admirable things I've seen a fictional character do. And one of the most abstract and inspiring, I think, versions of flying that the series tackles. And whenever I think of Haikyuu, it's impossible for me not to think of that journey and the sort of contrast it has with Kageyama's arc, Hinata's arc, Oikawa, Hoshiumi, whatever. and in a really odd, strange, bizarre, but such a powerful way. I think his story is one of the most encouraging and empowering, because I think it delves deepest into darkness and sadness that Haikyuu does, but he comes out of it smiling and happy and open-minded and super benefited by changing his mindset and being inspired. And when it seemed that he was every atom in his body didn't want him to. So that was a ramble as well.
No, dude, it was beautiful.
But but I just adore him so much, and I find him to be one of those life-changing characters as well, for all those reasons.
Fantastic, man. Nah, dude.
You opened my eyes to Washijo. He definitely climbed a lot in my Haikyuu favorites once I just realized how good he is. He kind of fits that core I talked about earlier with kind of being a prototype for the MC. That little giant Washijo Hinata dynamic is one of my favorites in the series.
100%.
I'm glad. He's just amazing. He deserves every bit of recognition he could get. So,
fantastic.
That's my last one, Washijo.
Man, amazing lists. Both of you guys cooked, and man, it's always difficult because similar to the situation that Fiji was just talking about, where it's always hard talking about number one. I haven't had the opportunity to really gush about my favorite character, because it has changed since the one that was before, which was my one for a long time. So adding some context into this before I reveal my number one, so that you guys can see the lens from which I'm viewing this character in. Leading into meeting this character, my number one and my number two, respectively, were Solid Snake and Yoshida Shoyo from Gintama. These are two characters that mean the absolute world to me, still do. And obviously, I feel like if I were to make an actual favorite characters of all time list, Yoshida Shoyo, even though the character I'm about to talk about it serves a similar purpose, he would most certainly be on the list because of how much he means to me as an individual. But my favorite speech in all of anime and manga is that speech in chapter 517, which is episode 304, whenever Shoyo is talking to Takatsugi, and he goes through that is the way of a samurai, and talks about a lot of different things which are integral to the core theme of Gintama. But there's one particular thing within that section that's always stood out to me, and is one of the main reasons why I love that series so much, which is whenever he states, Takatsugi asks, is Gintoki, speaking of Gintoki, is he the one who picked you up? And Yoshida Shoyo replies, well, perhaps I picked him up, or perhaps he picked me up. I'm not so sure now. And that's something I really love about Shoyo's character, and obviously through a lot of other characters as well. But looking at it through that lens, my number one is someone who represents that throughout the series, and in terms of has other situations that pick him up the same way that he picks others up, but he's someone who picked me up at the time I needed it the most. Going right after finishing a draft for one of my stories, I was left in a situation where I really didn't know what to do, and I was at a loss. I had just recently I graduated a year before, in a different field, but something that wasn't, it just wasn't my thing. And so it was, I knew I could do it, it just wasn't what I was really passionate about. So I obviously really wanted to be an author, and that's what I really wanted to focus on, but it just had to work, and all these things came to be before it. And so as things went on, I decided that I was not going to pursue that, and that's whenever originally I went through the magnificent, the glorious, the incredible Legend of Heroes Trails series. And I went through it starting right before COVID happened, at the beginning of 2019, or I'm sorry, at the end of 2019, and continued that journey up until October of 2020. It was a marvelous experience, one I'll never forget. But my favorite character of all time, thanks to all of the things that I'm referring to here, and looking at it through the lens of Yoshida Shoyo, looking at the lens through the rest of the characters that I listed today, looking at it through the lens of every character I've ever experienced, and because of what he held me through at that point in time, is the main character of the Trails of Cold Steel arc, which is Reen Schwarzer. I'm not going to go into details because obviously my boy AJ's going through it, and hopefully Fiji will as well in the future, and anybody else who is listening to this and doesn't know what the Trail series is. I don't want to ruin the experience for you, but what I am going to say is this: Reen's journey explores the very simple idea of happiness or one's purpose, and I think that was something I really needed to hear at the time. And so whenever you see a character that is so thoroughly explored with that idea in mind of is it your happiness or your purpose, and that's where a lot of the decisions are made of. That's where a lot of the core and integral moments of the story take place. Whenever I saw his character culminating and the decisions that were made there, it ultimately ended up in me making my own decision, and that's the reason why I decided to go back to school and really go and attempt to achieve what I'm currently trying to do. It's all thanks to this wonderful character's journey. Reen represents everything I love about the big three, not just in terms of just the characters that I just talked about, but AJ earlier talked about Kenpachi being the representative of shonen. Trails is a love letter to shonen battle manga, but I feel like Reen Schwarzer in particular is a love letter to everything and anything that shonen battle manga have ever attempted to do. I talked about the brilliance of certain chosen one dynamics in those characters. With Reen Schwarzer, we explore the consequences of being someone that is like a chosen one. And so what you have here is instead a character that, when explored as thoroughly as he is throughout the course of the series, being able to play and make decisions as this character, and then see these things play out, is one of the most powerful things I've ever experienced. And I think the thing that really sticks out in my mind is that in regards to how quote unquote well written of a character he is, he could even be seen as someone like a Son Goku or an Usagi of a character who at certain points in times is stripped down to the very structure and core of what a thing or a concept is. But because it is so laid bare in the way that it is, it has to resonate. It's why Reen is the most popular Falcom character, not just Trail's character, their most popular character in their company, the poster boy. Because when you strip something down to being so personal, there's no other way that you could tell that story, that it's coming directly from the creators to the page. That is something that's going to resonate, whether people, for people who really are going through said or certain thing at that point in time. And so, similar to what IJ was, or I'm sorry, what Fiji was saying earlier for how Inoue explored certain things with Miyamoto Musashi and in particular with Vagabond. Reen Schwarzer was not originally supposed to be the main protagonist of this arc, and the fact that they made that decision, that similar to Nadeko Sengoku, this character who was originally not even supposed to be there, ended up being the character that means so much, not just to me, but to many other members of the Trails fandom, is another representation of when you let the characters take over and they start telling the story they want to tell. That's the thing that's going to resonate the most. And so when you have the representation of real shonen in both its rawest elements and at its core, at its most emotional as well, but also a character who, like Naruto, can change everything around him, but also has to have that change inside of him as well. Have that Ichigo moment, have that Mugiwara no Luffy moment. He's a character that you can find many different archetypes that lead back to him. You can find every inspiration in the book that created and crafted this character. He's not a unique character by any stretch of the imagination, nor will he be the last of his kind. But I think in terms of execution and the story that he was put in, there is no way that anyone could have written that same character the same way that this series has. He has inspired me. It's the reason why I decided to embark on this journey once more. And the more that I go back and I replay that particular section of the Trails series, it just hits harder and harder as I get older, and I realize and I come to my own understanding of the fact that I also had to make certain decisions that were really difficult. But at the end of the day, going back to how I started this whole spiel, when you think about your happiness versus your purpose, a question that every human being has to go through. And I'm sure the reason why that was the theme in the first place is because maybe the creator himself was thinking about his happiness or his purpose. Do I follow the current ongoing video game trends, or do I go with the story that I actually want to tell? And so when you explore that through your main protagonist, it's going to resonate. And I'm so glad that they took the time to tell the story that they did with this magnificent character. I don't know when there will be another character that'll hit me as hard as this one, but if anyone could even think of getting into the Trail series, it puts a smile on my face, because I know eventually, whether this character is their least favorite character or their favorite character, I know that they will one day come face to face with the character that impacted me the most, which is Reen Schwarzer. So that is my number one of all time.
God damn, you cooked there, brother.
I appreciate you, man.
That was sorry. Go ahead, Fiji.
No, I didn't have much to say, man. That was just awesome. It's just a pleasure to hear you talk about things you're so passionate about, and I'm glad that character was able to help you in such a important period of your life.
Right.
Yeah, that's always good to hear about, man.
I knew, like, when as soon as I saw you did the big three as the joint number two, I had a feeling Reen would be your number one. I know a little bit about him. I knew he was the protagonist of the Cold Steel games, and I knew you really, because I've seen you tweet about him, gushing about him in general.
Yeah.
But so I guessed, but like I had no idea he had that sort of impact on you, and that was why. And it's just really infectious. So I really appreciate you sharing that with us, because, and selfishly, like, I'm making my way through Azure. I think I'm pretty deep into it. I'm not about to finish it, but I'm pretty deep into it, and I'm not experiencing any burnout at all with the series. So I plan to go into Cold Steel pretty quickly after that, and that just makes me so excited to see this character who impacted you so strongly and was there for you in such an important, formative moment for you. So, and that makes me more excited to get to it and more excited to share it with you, because of all that you say about seeing other people and what they take away from his character.
100%.
So yeah, it's just it was just lovely to hear that, and makes me very, very excited to continue and see what he's all about.
Yeah, man. Yeah, any time that you want to, obviously for the Trail series as a whole, but in particular, whenever you get to that saga, if you ever want to like update or anything, I will be a DM away at all times.
For sure.
Excuse me, at all times. So I'm very much looking forward to that. But ladies and gentlemen, this has been our top 10 core characters that represent our tastes in regards to our love for anime and manga, our love for stories, our love for fiction, our love for TV shows and comics and books and many different things. Just characters to represent our tastes, and because it represents our tastes in some way, shape, or form, it represents who we are and the things that we really appreciate within our stories. So once again, I really appreciate both of you guys for being here. Fiji, where can they find you, and what are you cooking right now that could get the people excited?
You could just find me, Radman. What am I cooking? Honestly, there's a lot, but I'm gonna put most of it on the back burner, because for the next 4 weeks we will be celebrating the goodbye to a series that has, been captivating us for the last couple of years. Well, more than that, but for me at least, the last 2 or so years, it's been on my mind almost non-stop, and that is Jujutsu Kaisen. So there's a lot I want to talk about with that and maybe make videos on. So that's mainly what we're going to be doing for the next few weeks. But yeah, thank you very much for having me. This was an absolute blast. Even just making the list was an interesting experience, but getting to talk about it and have some thoughts come off the cuff that I didn't plan for or anything was very fun. So thank you for having me on this.
Absolutely, bro. I appreciate you making time. Like I said, I know how late it is for you right now, and we're hitting the cap. So I really do appreciate you taking the time to be here with me and AJ. Because I know I talked to AJ before. I was like, man, we really got to get Fiji in one of these in the future, and we were gonna do it for Bleach, which, by the way, we're still doing it for Bleach. But I was like, well, for the character ones, we definitely got to have my boy on. So thank you, man. Thank you for taking the time to be here with us. AJ, bro, where can the people find you, and what's the current schedule like over on the Twitch channel?
ALECZANDXR. Sorry for the hard username. On YouTube, on Twitch, on Twitter, basically everywhere. So that's where you can find me. My current schedule, well, in terms of what I'm cooking, I've been doing that Rebirth video since April, and I will continue to be doing that for the months to come. But we're getting to the last few chapters where most of the yapping occurs, so there's still plenty to go. But progress is being made every week, and that's what I'm doing primarily for in terms of YouTube stuff. But for Twitch, the current schedule is Mondays and some Tuesdays once in a while, Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, which is amazing so far, and is destroying my mind and emotions. Wednesdays, Bleach Wednesday, which we've been talking about a little bit. That continues to be amazing. Yeah, always a highlight of the week, and we still got plenty to go in the series. Just over halfway.
We are currently in the Arrancar saga, so if anybody watching wants to see, make sure to tune in. Those streams are an absolute blast.
They're so much fun. So I can't wait for that every week. And then some variation of a One Piece Sunday. Sometimes we watch episodes. I did a Emu stream recently. Sometimes, nice. And then if it's a week where there's a chapter releasing, we do the chapter read and talk about it. And those are on Sundays, once in a while Fridays. So yeah, that's this current schedule.
Sweet. That is where you can find the boys. I have to emphasize, though, for both mine and Fiji's sake, anybody who is even remotely interested in seeing someone's reactions to Bleach, you have to visit those streams.
He is on chapter 387, by the way. Chat 387.
387. For those of you out there, he's in some peak. All right, he's definitely in some peak. So for everyone out there who also isn't able to make it live, he also has his VODs over on the Twitch channel as well.
They stay up for 2 months after that, and after that they go on Patreon as well. Yes. So they're pretty evergreen. Yeah.
So all love to AJ for continuing to provide that greatness, and for individuals like Fiji who and the rest of the mods who make it as seamless as possible. So all love to both of you guys. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, this has been it for this video. By the time this goes out, we might have already been doing our rankings of the One Piece arcs, but just in case, to clarify, once again, we will be ranking our favorite arcs in this series, and it's not just 1, 2, 3, or even 10, or maybe even 20. We're doing each and every single one, taking a community ranking from each members in the audience, and then of course doing my own personal ranking. And we're going to be doing a compare and contrast, taking our lists together and creating a full-blown King Recon channel favorite arcs of all time list, combining the community's lists and mine and maybe a few others lists as well. And so we'll be working on that, and obviously we've been building up to it, and it's something that I could not wait to do. But it's almost time for us to finally do this, as we are on the horizon of hitting another arc in the story whenever that ends up happening. So all love to everybody that is going to be watching this, as well as the individuals that are joining me in this call. This has been the Peak Fiction Podcast, episode whatever it is. And all love to everybody who made it this far and listened to a couple of guys ramble about their favorite characters. So God bless everyone. Take care and have a wonderful day or night wherever you are. Peace, and have a amazing day.